Could there be more than one universe out there and more than one version of ourselves? For years, scientists have been exploring the idea of alternate dimensions and parallel universes. Although we don't have any concrete evidence yet, there are some signals we have received over the years that might have come from another universe. There's a theory out there that deja vu occurs when different universes are in sync for a short period of time. For example, maybe you're in the bathroom and you grab your toothbrush. In another universe at the same time, maybe that version of yourself grabbed a hairbrush. Or in one universe you pour a glass of wine, in another you pour yourself a glass of champagne. Those things are happening at the same time, just with small differences. But you're in sync for that moment, and that's why you think to yourself, oh hey, I've done this before. Because in another universe, you just actually did. It's a crazy theory, but many believe it's true. I mean, for all we know, it is true. It's just hard to prove these things. Moving on, at number 9 we have the dreams, and if you guys are liking this so far, then smash that like button because it really helps me out and I appreciate it and you're the best. Some scientists believe that dreams are actually glimpses into a parallel universe. By dreaming, you are seeing what yourself in another universe is doing. 1,000 years ago, mystics believed that dreams are what are happening in a parallel universe. But they also believed that this universe was home to ghosts and spirits. Well, over the years, scientists have agreed with this theory, minus all the ghost and spirit stuff. Well, this could explain why some people have had vivid dreams of places that they have never visited. Maybe that's because their other self was currently there visiting it. Or when you see something in your dream and then the next day it happens in real life. That has happened to me on a number of occasions. Either you're psychic or you got an insight into another universe when you were dreaming, and that's how you knew it was going to occur. Now, there is no way to prove this, but there's also no way to disprove this. In our 8th spot today we have the Flintstones. Who loves this classic cartoon? That and the Jetsons were pretty iconic. Smash that like button if you agree. Now, the Flintstones are pronounced as so you would think it would be spelt as so. No, apparently it's the Flintstones with the hard T. I refuse to believe this. Now, you may be thinking, Lindsay, what's the big deal? Well, this is an example of the Mandela effect. I've talked about this before a lot. Basically, it's when a bunch of people remember something being a certain way and another group of people remember it being a different way. The Mandela effect, for those of you who don't know, is named off of Nelson Mandela, because people clearly remember him dying in prison in the 80s when he didn't actually pass away until 2013. So theory goes that there are parallel universes out there. In this case, we have the Flintstones universe and the Flintstones universe. Over time, maybe our universes merged, which is why we have the memory of the Flintstones. The show was actually named that, just in another universe. Little things like these are signs that multiple universes are out there. In our 7th spot today, we have the strange space signals. In spring of 2020, NASA legit thought they found concrete evidence of parallel universes. Basically, they detected some odd signals coming from the South Pole. It was so odd that they had no explanation for it besides parallel universes. So basically, they discovered that high energy neutrinos were coming up out of the Earth and headed to the sky. In fact, they found that this energy was coming up from the Earth instead of down from space. Now, this was weird for a number of reasons. The fact it was going up suggests that when the Big Bang occurred, it formed two universes, one that flows forward and the other in reverse, meaning the other universe is traveling back in time while we're moving forward. For them, the Big Bang represents an end, not the beginning. That is mind-blowing. In our 6th spot, we have Star Wars. This is another example of the Mandela effect, and it's going to make you freaking lose your mind. Who here is a Star Wars fan? Smash that like button or comment down below if you are. Well, even if you're not a fan, I'm sure you all have heard or seen that dramatic scene where it's revealed that Luke's father is, spoiler alert, Darth Vader. He goes, "Luke, I am your father." Wrong. Apparently, he never even said that, yet we all remember him saying the line exactly like that. And even huge Star Wars fans agree to this. Well, when you watch the scene, Luke says, "He told me you killed him," in regards to Obi-Wan telling him that Darth Vader killed his dad. Then Darth Vader replies with, "No, I am your father." So he never even says Luke, it's just no. What the actual heck? So again, people believe that this is a sign that we switched universes. In the other universe, the movie had Darth Vader say the line, "Luke, I am your father." In this universe, he did not. mad at that one. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the black holes. This next theory was created by Stephen Hawking, and that dude was a freaking genius. So if he believes that black holes are a signal from a parallel universe, then maybe I do too. So in 2016, Stephen Hawking created a study in which he proposed that black holes actually lead to another universe. Instead of destroying everything that goes near them, it just transports you into another universe. Previously, it was said that anything that gets sucked into the hole will be destroyed and lost forever. But in this case, they would just travel through and pop out into another universe. Maybe that's why scientists are starting to discover weird space objects that look unlike anything from our universe. It's because they're coming from a different universe. Maybe Stephen Hawking is onto something, and black holes are actually portals. In our 4th spot, we have the simulation. In 2018, researchers ran a massive computer simulation that involved building a new universe under a variety of different conditions, and they discovered that universes could still be created even with less dark energy as ours. Study co-author Pascal Elahi said, and I quote, "Even in universes with 300 times as much dark energy as ours, life found a way. Our simulation showed that the accelerated expansion driven by dark energy has hardly any impact on the birth of stars, and hence places for life to arise. Meaning, other planets can exist in other universes even if that universe was being torn apart by dark energy." He continued on saying, and I quote, "Even increasing dark energy many hundreds of times might not be enough to make a dead universe." They then went on to believe that aliens are living on planets in other universes. The reason we haven't found them yet is because they're in other universes, not ours. In our 3rd spot, we have the pattern. A number of astronomers started picking up a weird signal coming from the sky. Basically, the signal will chime for 4 days, then after the 4th day, it'll stop. It will then stop for 12 days before picking up again and doing the same thing over and over again. It's thought that maybe on the days where it's not sending a signal towards us, it's actually sending a signal in another direction or to another universe. Some believe that this is coming from aliens or other life forms, or from people in another universe. If not, what else could it be? The signal is very consistent and they still don't have an explanation for it. In our 2nd spot, we have the silence of the lambs. Here's another Mandela effect example that will make you lose your mind. Okay. All of you have better seen the movie Silence of the Lambs. If you haven't, you're not a true horror fan. Anyways, for some reason, we all remember Hannibal Lecter going, "Hello, Clarice." You know, that was my Anthony Hopkins impression. Pretty good one. And he says it in a really freaking scary way. But apparently, he never said that in the movie. He only has said good morning during their first meeting. This is not okay. I literally can picture him saying it right now. So here's another sign that there are multiple universes. There's a universe where Anthony Hopkins does "Hello, Clarice," and one where he doesn't. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the cosmic bruise. In 2017, cosmologists discovered a weird cold spot in the universe. After studying it, a number of people believe that this cold spot is a bruise that was left after our universe collided with another universe. Professor Tom Shanks in Durham University's Center for Extragalactic Astronomy said, and I quote, "One explanation for the cold spot is that it might be the remnant signal of the collision of our universe and one of the trillions of others." In fact, the team found 4 bruises, meaning that our universe has collided several other times in the past. Meaning, there has to be multiple universes out there.
On May 5th, 2018, NASA launched the InSight Mars lander, and it was designed to give the planet its first thorough checkup since being formed. This technology allows us to collect lots of data, like hearing what's going on inside of the planet. Compared to Earth, the interior of Mars is fairly quiet, but it still experiences quakes underneath the surface. The InSight lander is equipped with a seismometer called Seismic Experiment for Interior Structure, or they just call it SEIS, which picks up on the different vibrations of the planet and allows scientists to hear what the heck is going on inside. In April 2019, the SEIS got its first hit, which turned out to be, for the first time ever, a Marsquake. This is the first recorded trembling that appears to have come from inside the planet as opposed to being caused by forces above the surface like wind. Most people are familiar with quakes on Earth, which are caused by the moving of tectonic plates. Mars does not have tectonic plates like the moon, but they both still experience quakes. In this case, they're caused by a continual process of cooling and contraction that creates stress. The stress then builds over time until strong enough to break the crust. The audio of the quake is very ominous sounding, almost like a really strong wind, but since space is so silent, it makes things super ominous. It's not so terrifying until you remember it's coming from inside of the planet. Number 9. The Sun. Considering space is such a quiet place, it really seems like everything in it makes a lot of noise. The Sun is no exception. I was totally happy before this video not thinking about the Sun making making noise, but now I'm afraid it's all I will be able to think of. The sun has so much energy coming out of it that it vibrates on multiple frequencies at once, which then cause a humming sound. To me, the sun sounds like one of those singing bowls used in meditation. It's almost soothing until you remember that you're listening to the sun vibrate. NASA explained how we're able to hear the sun, and basically when anything material moves, waves travel through it, and the same thing happens inside the sun. Those waves are bouncing around the sun, and if our eyes were sensitive enough, we could actually see this jiggle. Since our human eyes are so useless and weak, scientists turned that jiggle into a sound. Like Mars, we want to know what's going on inside, and thanks to the sun vibrating at many different frequencies, we can use those vibrations to look inside. Now scientists can see huge rivers of solar material flowing around and are starting to finally understand the layers of the sun. Number 8. Crossing Saturn's rings. October 15, 1997 marks the day that the Cassini-Huygens was launched. Commonly just called Cassini, was a space research mission by NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Italian Space Agency to send a space probe to study the planet Saturn and its systems, including its rings and natural satellites. Cassini was the fourth space probe to visit Saturn and the first to enter its orbit, where it stayed from 2004 to 2007. During this mission, one of the things they discovered, unfortunately, was what it sounds like to cross the planet's rings. Saturn's rings are made up of billions of small chunks of ice and rock coated with other materials such as dust. The audio clip sounds mainly like static, but as it goes, you can hear more action and the sound becomes more intense. It's almost like the sound of a really heavy rain. Cassini's initial dive into the void of Saturn's rings was on April 26, 2017, when the sounds were recorded. Not only was this our first time hearing what this section of space sounds like, it's the first time a spacecraft has ever ventured into the gap between the planet and its rings. The sound is so loud it's hard to believe that scientists were surprised to see just how empty it was. At number 7, Earth Whistle. This sound is terrifying because it sounds like something straight out of a video game. Space is far from empty, and as we are learning today, it's not very quiet either. Space contains energetic charged particles governed by magnetic and electric fields, and it behaves like nothing we've ever experienced on Earth before. Particles are continually tossed to and fro by the motion of various electromagnetic waves known as plasma waves. The plasma waves create a rhythmic noise that, with the right tools, we can hear across space. Basically, the waves create distinct sounds depending on the plasma they travel through. For example, the region tight around the Earth called the plasmasphere is pretty dense with cold plasma. Waves traveling inside the region might sound much different to those outside of it. Beyond the plasmasphere, where it's warmer, waves can create a high-pitched chirping sound like a flock of noisy birds. If you look up Earth Whistle, it sounds like the classic laser gun sound effect, or like crickets and frogs at night. Either way, it sounds fake, and it's hard to believe it was recorded right by Earth in space. Number 6, Jupiter. Everyone thinks aliens live on Mars. Due to its similarities to Earth, maybe it is the one housing another life form. I would agree it makes a lot of sense that aliens are hanging out on Mars. That was until I heard what it sounds like on Jupiter. I mentioned earlier Cassini, the spacecraft that was sent on a mission to check out Saturn. Well, Cassini had a historic 20-year mission to Saturn, and while in space it stopped by Jupiter to receive a gravitational boost en route to its final destination. Cassini flew by Jupiter in January 2001. While it was flying by, it captured some spooky alien-like radio signals. Of all the sounds on this list, the ones on Jupiter sound the most like aliens. The other sounds were spooky, but this one sounds almost animated, perhaps like a conversation even. Apparently the sound comes from waves that were derived from an interaction of the magnetic field that surrounds Jupiter and the solar wind of particles speeding away from the sun. At number 5, unusually close signals. There are bright, fleeting blasts of radio waves coming from the vicinity of a nearby galaxy, and they are only pushing one of astronomy's biggest mysteries even further from an answer. The repeating bursts of energy seem to be coming from an ancient group of stars called a globular cluster. What's so special about that? Well, it's one of the last places astronomers expected to find them. These extremely bright and extremely brief bursts of radio waves are known as fast radio bursts, or FRBs. Originating billions of light years away, the FRBs have defied explanation since they were first spotted in 2007. Based on observations, scientists infer that the bursts are powered by young, short-lived cosmic objects called magnetars. That was until a couple of years ago when a fast radio burst was discovered and traced to a globular cluster about 11.7 million light years away near the neighboring spiral galaxy M81. At number 4, Space Roar. In space, nobody can hear you scream, but scientists did pick up on what they described as a roar. I don't know if you could find a scarier sound coming from space. Back in 2006, scientists began looking for distant signals in the universe using a complex instrument attached to a huge balloon that was sent to space. The instrument is called the Absolute Radiometer for Cosmology, Astrophysics, and Diffuse Emissions, or just ARCADE. The ARCADE was able to pick up radio waves from the heat of distant stars, but none of them were expecting what they heard next. The instrument listened from a height of about 23 miles, and it picked up a signal that was 6 times louder than what had originally been expected. They tried to source the loud sound, but soon discovered it was too loud to be early stars and far louder than the predicted combined radio emission from distant galaxies, so basically scientists were stumped. Even today, we still have no idea what the source of the roar was. Apparently, on top of not knowing the source, the mysterious sound is so loud that it's making the efforts to search for signals from the first stars formed after the Big Bang quite difficult. It's just out there covering up our view of early stars and being emitted by something we can't yet imagine. Number 3. Space Heartbeat Mystery. Mysterious radio signals from space have been known to repeat, but a few years back, for the first time, researchers noticed a pattern in a series of bursts coming from a single source 500 million light years away from Earth. Fast radio bursts, or FBRs, which I mentioned before, are millisecond-long bursts of radio waves in space. Individual radio bursts emit once and don't repeat, but repeating FRBs are known to send out the waves multiple times. Usually when they repeat, it's sporadic or in a cluster according to previous observations. Between September 16, 2018 and October 30, 2019, researchers with the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or CHIME, detected a pattern in bursts occurring every 16.35 days. Over the course of 4 days, the signal would release a burst or two each hour, then it would go silent for another 12 days. In 2019, CHIME detected the sources of 8 new repeating fast radio bursts, including this signal. The repeating signal was traced to a massive spiral galaxy around 500 million light years away. Researchers hoped that by tracing the origin of these mysterious bursts, they would be able to determine what caused them, but to this day, scientists still have no idea. I know I mentioned aliens a lot, but come on. If anything is another life form trying to get in communication with us, it has to be this. What else would be able to stay so consistent in space? Number 2. Jupiter's bow shock. Well, we all know now that I think Jupiter is home to aliens already, but after hearing Jupiter's bow shock, I don't know if I'm more or less convinced. The sun emits a steady stream of charged solar wind, which can be repelled by a very strong magnetic force, like that of the magnetic field of a larger planet. When the solar wind meets a strong magnetic force surrounding a planet, it's deflected, and all its energy of motion is converted to thermal energy. This energized region is known as a bow shock. The name is borrowed from a similar phenomenon in aerodynamics. The sound of passing through this region was recorded by the Voyager spacecraft. Voyager 1 and 2 were both launched into space in 1977 to take advantage of a favorable alignment of Jupiter and Saturn. When the spacecraft encountered the bow shock, there was a very sudden burst of intense low-frequency emissions extending over a wide range of frequencies. To me, the bow shock on Jupiter sounds like the little aliens are just chilling, chattering away, and then explosion. It sounds like something big blows up, and the tone of it is much deeper than the high pitch of Jupiter itself. Once again, remembering that the sound was recorded in space makes it even crazier. And at number 1, black hole. Okay, of all the sounds you can hear from space, a black hole is the scariest. I think also just in general, black holes are one of the scariest things that exist. First of all, what the heck is a black hole? Well, according to NASA, a black hole is a place in space where gravity pulls so much that even light cannot get out. Horrifying. The gravity is so strong because the matter has been squeezed into a tiny space. This can happen when a star is dying. Because no light can get out, people can't see black holes. They are invisible. Space telescopes with special tools can help find black holes. The special tools can see how stars that are very close to black holes act differently than other stars. The sound that a black hole makes is even more haunting. I've never heard a more fitting sound effect for a spine-chilling scene in a horror movie. It sounds like what I think hundreds of ghosts and spirits would sound like if they were to circle around a spooky dungeon. Maybe it's just me, but I seriously think it's a sound they used in Harry Potter when they were at Azkaban.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have interception. To start off this list today, let's talk about one of the very first electronic interceptions because, to be honest, this was happening sooner than I would have thought. thought, but in a very different way than what we are used to now. Let's set the stage and take it back to the beginning of the 1900s, the first year of the new century. We are in the midst of the Boer War, which lasted from 1899 until 1902. Prior to this war, the British Royal Navy had installed wireless sets that had been produced by Marconi onto their ships. This allowed the British Army to be able to use some limited wireless signaling and communication. During the war, however, nearing the end, things took a bit of a turn. While the British had captured and were holding cities and towns, there were still many dispersed Boer commandos who were out there and were taking to different tactics. They began a guerrilla war, and part of that was by intercepting telegraph messages. Not only did they intercept important messages, but they were even able to capture some of the sets to be able to use them themselves. In our number 9 spot today, we have mobilization. The Russo-Japanese War is one that lasted for a little over a year, spanning from 1904 to 1905. While the war was mainly between Russia and Japan, the signal interception I want to talk about today came from a British ship. As the Russian fleet was preparing for conflict with Japan in 1904, a British ship called the HMS Diana was stationed in the Suez Canal. This canal is located in Egypt and it connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. While stationed here, the HMS Diana ended up intercepting Russian naval wireless signals that were being sent out. These signals were apparently intended to signal for the mobilization of the fleet. In our number 8 spot today, we have the BBC. So for this one, we have to be on the same page for what a numbers station is. Basically, they're shortwave radio stations, and the transmissions or broadcasts are usually certain numbers or other repetitive things which are believed to be aimed to address intelligence officers who are operating in foreign countries. So for this one, we are taking it back to 1983 when the BBC, yes, the British Broadcasting Corporation, received a letter from a listener they had in Andorra. This listener had written into the World Service Waveguide program to complain that during her attempt at listening, she was interrupted by a female voice that was reading out numbers in English, and she wanted to know what this interference was. While the corporation gave a regular, non-sinister answer to the confused woman, after more research was done into the case, people aren't quite convinced. Many people who know much more about these things and recognize the patterns seen in number stations are fairly certain that this interruption was a numbers station that was being broadcast on a random frequency that just happened to intercept with this woman's BBC program. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Duga radar. So for this one, we are talking about a huge missile defense radio structure called Duga 3. This structure is suspected of having been wildly over budget, and it was the source of many complaints after it was built. The systems were extremely powerful and broadcast in short-wave radio bands. They would appear without warning and sounded like a sharp, repetitive tapping noise, and it would disrupt things like legitimate broadcasts, amateur radio, commercial aviation communications, and utility transmissions, which all led to there being international complaints, and at the time, people didn't know what it was. This led people to think that this signal was actually being used for things such as Soviet mind control or weather control experiments. In our number 6 spot today, we have World War I. For this one, we are taking it back to the First World War and discussing something that really changed the way we use wireless communications. Basically, during the First World War, British forces were able to intercept German radio communications. With this newfound ability, they were able to learn about the plans that German forces had and used this to their advantage. Of course, later when this was found out, no one wanted a similar thing to happen to them, but the technology was so valuable they couldn't just give up on it. This is said to be what led to the use of cryptography, which was intended to conceal the messages being sent out, and thus cryptoanalysis, which originated to get around this new extra layer of protection, was born. In our number 5 spot today, we have Cobra Mist. This is the code name that was used to describe the experimental over-the-horizon radar that ended up being stationed at Orford Ness, England. It was originally supposed to be stationed in Turkey, where it could cover most of the European Soviet airspace, but Turkey had some objections and weren't all that pleased with the idea. This led to the site being moved to the UK, where it offers a view of most of Eastern Europe. The system was built through the 1960s and into the 1970s, so you think it would have been this amazing success, but things went more than a little awry when it was first turned on. When switched on, it began having these noise problems, and despite best efforts, no one could figure out where these problems were coming from, which led to the project being shut down in 1973. In our number 4 spot today, we have UVB-76. This sound apparently began to happen in the 1980s when a radio tower just north of Moscow began transmitting a random and seemingly bizarre assortment of beeps, but in 1992 the sound began to change. In that year it suddenly switched to a buzzing sort of sound that would last about a second, and this sound would occur somewhere between 21 to 34 times every minute. This strange routine would be interrupted once every few weeks by a male voice which would then be reciting a string of numbers and words, mostly Russian sounding names like Anna and Nikolai. The buzzing wasn't necessarily always exactly the same, as the tone would switch and there would be different intervals between the buzzes, but one thing that was always consistent is that every hour on the hour, the station would have 2 quick consecutive buzzes. To make things stranger, in June of 2010 and also in August of that year, the station briefly stopped sending out signals, despite it having been constantly for years and years. At the end of August in 2010, the station again changed and there began to be different shuffling sounds and thuds that could be heard in the background, and often little snippets of the Dance of the Little Swans from Swan Lake would also interrupt the broadcast. While we obviously know that these sounds are coming from a radio broadcast and we can make out what some of the sounds we're hearing are, we have absolutely no idea what purpose they serve, where they are coming from, or what they might mean. Right now the best guess is that these are secret messages that are being transmitted to secret agents. If that is the case, it's likely we might never know exactly what is being discussed in these broadcasts. In our number 3 spot today we have the Lincolnshire Poacher. The Lincolnshire Poacher, which is a British numbers station, was being transmitted from Cyprus. It began transmitting in the middle of the 1960s and was in operation until quite recently in 2008. This station is believed to have been operated by the British Secret Intelligence Service, and the reason behind its name is because it is said that the station commonly used bars from the English folk song of the same name. There would often be a female voice heard reciting a group of 5 numbers, with the final number in the group being read in a higher pitched voice. It is believed that the station was meant to be communicating with undercover agents operating in the Middle East. Back in 2006, however, this broadcasting was interrupted by the North Korean Foreign Language Service, Voice of Korea. This language service began to broadcast on the same frequency as the Lincolnshire Poacher, which some believe may have been intentional. In our number 2 spot today we have Ana Montez. For this one, we're taking a bit of a turn and talking about someone who used secret signals and transmissions in order to spy on the US for Cuba. Ana Montez is a former American senior analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and for 17 years she used encrypted messages to receive information and communicate with the Cuban government in order to spy on the United States. In the charging documents, American federal prosecutors said, quote, "Montez communicated with the Cuban intelligence service through encrypted messages and received her instructions through shortwave encrypted transmissions from Cuba. In addition, Montez communicated by coded numeric pager messages with the Cuban intelligence service by public telephones located in the District of Columbia and Maryland. The codes included 'I received message' or 'danger'." Anna was arrested by the FBI at her office on September 21st, 2001, and part of the reason why is because she apparently had classified information on the US military's pending invasion of Afghanistan, and people were worried that she might go on to further reveal this information. While Anna pleaded guilty to her crimes, which could have carried a death sentence, she received 25 years and her tentative release date is January 8th, 2023. In our number 1 spot today we have Attention. This is a number station that ended up being the first to be officially and publicly accused of transmitting messages to spies. This station was the center of an espionage trial, and US prosecutors claimed that the station was sending numbered codes for the accused to write down using Sony handheld shortwave receivers and then decode using a computer program. This gave them their next instructions that were to be followed in their spying plans. During this trial, the FBI testified that they had entered one of the spies' apartments and copied the decryption code that was used for the messages sent from the station. Using this code, they were able to unveil the secret messages being sent out, which they read in court.
Coming in at number 10 we have the Bermuda Triangle. Ever wondered about the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle? It's a known spot for boat and plane disappearances. This spot between Miami, Bermuda and San Juan in Puerto Rico has seen a large number of mysterious disappearances, leading some people to speculate that there is something mysterious and malicious going on. Some of the most notable losses have been the USS Cyclops that disappeared with 308 people on board in 1918, and the disappearance of the US Navy Avenger torpedo planes in 1945. According to the Express news publication, on average 4 planes and 20 boats are reported lost every year in the area. While we've never officially gotten to the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle mystery, some people think that it is a portal to another universe, and well, I guess that's why. Why couldn't there be a portal in the ocean? Recently, a treasure hunter claimed that they found an unidentified object that they believe is an alien spaceship under the Bermuda Triangle. Maybe it isn't something that crash landed, maybe it's something that came up. Perhaps it's a scary signal from a parallel universe. Coming into number 9, we have the Aurora Borealis. Is the aurora, otherwise known as the Northern Lights, a signal from another universe? The aurora appears as glowing curtains, like thin pieces of fabric waving in the wind. They're parallel rays that move in the direction of magnetic winds. They're charged solar particles reacting with our atmosphere and magnetic field. But can you imagine what people thought when they first saw them? Even though we have an explanation these days, people still find them understandably mystical. Some people believe that they are where the multiverses collide and 2 dimensions touch. This idea is kind of explored in Philip Pullman's Northern Lights or the Golden Compass, where the aurora lights the passage to another world. Okay, let's get a little further into the physics of the Earth's poles, shall we? Coming into number 8, we have the South Atlantic anomaly. So the Earth has a double set of radiation belts, the outer and inner radiation belts that splay out like wings surrounding the Earth. This is often referred to as Van Allen. Anyway, these pull in the magnetic poles, but there is something weird going on, the South Atlantic anomaly. This is where the Earth's inner Van Allen radiation belt comes closest to the Earth's surface, dipping down to just 120 miles in the sky. Here is where the Earth's magnetic field is weakest. This area has higher than usual levels of radiation. The International Space Station has extra shielding when passing through this area, and the Hubble Space Telescope doesn't take observations when it passes through. Astronauts have claimed to see weird shooting stars in this area too. Now the anomaly is exactly that. An anomaly. There's no matching in the north. Some people think that it means that our magnetic poles are primed and ready to flip. Others say it's evidence of a portal to a parallel universe. Alright, taking it in a different direction at number 7, we have cows falling through this sky. So how else would you explain a cow falling through the sky to Earth? Clearly the cow is just grazing way too near to a rip or a window in its parallel universe and it fell through to ours. But a really inconvenient location in the sky. I don't know, it does sound crazy, sure. In 2003, the New York Times ran an article about a Japanese fishing boat that was sunk by a flying cow, or more accurately, a cow that fell from the sky. In 2013, a Brazilian man was killed when a cow fell through his roof and crushed him. Where are these cows coming from? Could they be from another dimension? Maybe. Coming into number 6, we have the quantum jump. According to a man named Burt Goldman, often referred to as the American monk, he can jump through to alternate universes using meditation. Goldman has practiced Zen meditation for 50 years and now believes that he can access the multiverse. In one of his controversial YouTube videos, he says that there is an infinite number of parallel realities existing with us in the same room. He describes his multidimensional mental teleportation as a controlled daydream, which actually kind of builds on from our part 1 where we discussed some cultures believing that dreams come from a parallel universe. Coming into number 5, we have Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Some people believe that mirrors offer a glimpse into an alternate reality. A lot of these people have watched a lot of Star Trek, but to be fair, after scripting 2 of these videos and hearing some of the finer physics behind it all, it isn't even the craziest thing that I've ever heard. Believers in the occult and witchcraft often have a lot of superstitions surrounding mirrors. Perhaps Bloody Mary isn't a ghoul summoned from the dead, but a spooky lady from an alternate reality. Or maybe not. Some people believe that if you stare hard enough
at your own reflection, you'll catch a glimpse of a parallel you, but this could just be hypnotic hallucination. Alright, building on from mirrors for a moment, at number 4 we have what lives behind the dark matter. Over the last few decades, scientists have observed a whole bunch of dark matter hanging out in our universe. Dark matter, so to speak, are dark spots that seem to make up 26.8% of our universe. No one knows what it consists of, and no one's ever really seen it because it doesn't interact with the matter that scientists know about, visible matter that makes up around 4.9% of what we can see. Cosmology is a vast and complicated topic and field of study, so to simplify intense and thoroughly researched studies, some cosmologists do think that dark matter could be the sign of another inverse universe existing side by side to ours, but unseen. If you do want to do a deep dive into dark matter, I would recommend checking out Lisa Randall and Gigi Fan's new theory of dark matter. Coming into number 3, we have the mysterious case of Linnea Barcia. The internet is awash with stories from Linnea Barcia's strange day. The woman wrote to a Spanish website to say that she'd somehow jumped to another universe in 2008. This universe was similar, but not quite her known reality. The post came in 2008, and the 41-year-old said that she was worried that she was suffering from a psychotic breakdown, and I get it. She said that she'd gone to sleep one evening and woken up the next day to find a world around her altered in very strange and subtle ways. The sheets on her bed, for example, were different, which was somewhat baffling. When she went to work, she found that she was actually working in a different department in a slightly different part of the office. She found that she was still with her ex-boyfriend, not her new boyfriend of 4 months. Her sister had never had the surgery on her arm that she swore that she did. Odd. She wrote that the rest of the world seemed much the same. She went to the doctors and they suggested that she was suffering from hallucinogenic stress. Maybe she was, or maybe she slipped into a parallel universe. Coming into number 2, we have aliens and UFOs. There have been a number of alien and UFO sightings throughout history, and things really seem to ramp up between the 1940s and 1980s. The most notorious sightings include the Roswell crash landings, the Kenneth Arnold sightings, the Lubbock lights, the 76 Tehran incident, and the Belgium wave. The problem is that none of the sightings have ever been confirmed as aliens, they're simply unidentified objects amid unexplained phenomenon. On top of that, cosmologists and astronomers haven't identified any life beyond our planet as of yet, so it couldn't possibly be aliens, unless they've figured out how to travel faster than the speed of light and move quickly into hyperspace, in which case they could be coming from a parallel galaxy, or maybe they travelled through a wormhole from a parallel universe. Alright, finally coming into number 1, we have one of the most credible pieces of evidence for a parallel universe, but it gets pretty heavy, so bear with me, we're talking about electrons. Alright, so this is some pretty deep physics and it can get a bit intense, so I just want you to open your mind for a moment. So this is the humble electron. It could be the key to proving parallel universes once and for all. Electrons are little subatomic particles. Now, I want to try and keep it simple so we can all understand, but electrons can spin both clockwise and anti-clockwise. But quantum mechanics says that they can spin both clockwise and counterclockwise at the very same time, which means there are two things happening at the same time, which is hard for us to get our heads around because how? To quote an article in Noteworthy, if the world is full of weird objects that are spinning clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time, why have I in my entire life never seen that happen? That excellent question is the heart of what has become known as the quantum measurement paradox. The answer here simply could be the multiverse, and the key could be the makeup of everything. Electrons get even weirder as observed in quantum indeterminism. Basically, to keep this simple, if you fire an electron through a double slit, you would expect it to go through one slit or the other. However, scientists have observed electrons acting like waves, passing through both slits simultaneously and interfering with itself at the end. It's very, very complicated, but this could be a hint towards proving the theory that multiple outcomes create multiple universes. For example, there's a universe that exists where I put my hair behind my ear, and there's one where I chose not to. They may interfere with one another. Alright, coming in at number 10, we have the deep space radio bursts. Mystery fast radio bursts were discovered in 2007. These bursts flash for a micro instant, but emit more energy than the sun does in 10,000 years. years. The high energy surges of long waves have been detected 18 times over the past 10 years, and one burst in 2012 recorded in Puerto Rico occurred numerous times in the same pattern. Okay, this is what it sounded like. After fierce debates and a lot of head scratching, the source of the sound was traced to a microgalaxy 3 billion light years away from Earth. A lot of theorists have concluded that the sound is a space signal from another world, or a parallel universe looking to get in touch. Coming in at number 9, we have the man from Taurid. Were we sent a man from another parallel universe, or did he arrive via some kind of portal or vortex? Our story here stems back to 1954, when a man was detained at the Japanese border after arriving on a plane from Europe to Haneda Airport. The man said he was on his 3rd business trip to Japan that year, and he had a wallet filled with a mixture of currencies, seeming to verify his business traveller status. When he presented his passport, officials were absolutely baffled, asking where he was from. Now, the man, who primarily spoke French, said, "Taurid. Where is this mystery place?" He showed his passport again and the stamps that supported his travels. The only thing is, nobody had ever heard of Taurid. The company he was travelling to said that they'd never heard of him, and he was carrying a checkbook to a non-existent bank. When he was asked to point out Taurid on the map, he pointed to where Andorra is today and seemed confused and offended to be told that it's not a real country. He was detained in a hotel overnight while Japanese authorities decided what to do with him, but by morning he disappeared. Did he accidentally walk through a portal to another universe? Maybe. Coming in at number 8, we have the Bernstein-Bears phenomena. Also called the Mandela effect, the Bernstein-Bears phenomena claims to prove the existence of parallel universes with subtle differences. People vehemently claim that the Bernstein-Bears were spelled with an E and not an A, and honestly, I for one absolutely thought that the Looney Tunes were the Looney Tunes until I watched a video on the phenomena last year, and now I'm straight up convinced that I'm living in the wrong universe, as it is clearly Looney Tunes. They're cartoons. This new world doesn't make any sense. Some people out there are also adamant that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the late 1980s, which is more than just a slightly altered timeline. It's not just spellings here, this is a pretty major parallel universe event. Coming in at number 7, we have deja vu. Deja vu, a glitch in the Matrix, or a signal from a parallel universe. While both seem as likely as one another, it is thought by some that the weird moments where we feel like we've been or experienced something before are actually signals that something key is happening in our parallel lives. Not only do some people believe parallel universes exist side by side, some people think they interact with one another in some way. According to Dr. Michio Kaku, an American futurist, deja vu occurs as a result of a person's ability to flip between universes. Others believe it is because we're vibrating in unison with the frequency of another universe that's parallel with our very own. Oh, I've gone cross-eyed. Coming in at number 6, we have the Lost Beatles album. A parallel universe may have given our world a gift in the form of a Lost Beatles album, Everyday Chemistry. This story goes that in 2009, a man called James Richards found himself accidentally in a parallel universe, as you do. Luckily, there was also a person from another parallel universe there, a man named Jonas. Now, Jonas was on a trans-dimensional tourism trip from the other Earth, and he told Richards that in his world, amongst other things, John Lennon was still alive and the Beatles never broke up. Richards then stole a copy of a later album never released by the band and returned with it to our Earth. What did he do with one of the most sought after pieces of music from a non-history that almost but never happened here? He uploaded it to the internet. Eagle-eared fans were absolutely having none of it though. They said the album is comprised of clever mashups from all of the Beatles' solo careers. Richards later said that even though in an alternate universe the Beatles hadn't broke up, that didn't mean their future music ideas disappeared. I'm not so sure about this one, but I would love to hear what Paul McCartney has to say about it. Paul, tell us, is it real? I guess you're living in another universe so you don't know, but I don't know. I feel like you'd be able to answer. Coming in at number 5, we have dreams. Could our dreams be signals from a parallel universe? Some say maybe. In a number of First Nations cultures in North and Central America, people believe that dreams allow us to walk planes in other dimensions. Their reasoning is that dreams take place in color and can include all of their senses. They think that when you're in a dream, you are in another world, perhaps a world you already exist in. If you're doing something strange in your dream, maybe it's a sign that actually you live a far stranger life somewhere else. Coming in at number 4, we have the bruise. Anyone else here bruised like a peach? Just me? Me? And the universe. In 2010, along with a team of researchers, Stephen Feeney of the University College in London announced that he had discovered patterns in the radiation background left over from the Big Bang. Now this seemed to suggest that our universe bumped into not 1, not 2, but 4 other universes and was left bruised. Okay, what is the plural of universes? Universi? Universi? Universi. Also, from the bruising, further researchers in California think that it is clear that this leads to some kind of like bubble universe theory, which maybe I can get on board with. Maybe Men in Black got it right when they imagined us all as marbles in a big bag. Coming into number 3, we have the cold spot. In 2004, astronomers found something that baffled them, an unusually cold area of space. The area is 1.8 billion light years across and much colder than its surroundings. The area also contained 10,000 less galaxies than in other areas of a similar size studied in space. A researcher from Durham University in the UK believed that the spot could be evidence of a multiverse. They said it seemed as if a parallel universe smashed into ours, affecting it like a car pile-up on the motorway would, only they're calling it a cosmic shunt. They believed the impact was so vast it pushed energy out from a big region of space, therefore creating the cold spot. It's hard to get your head around, but that is what they think. Coming in at number 2, we have City in the Sky. In October 2015, Chinese TV went wild when thousands of residents in 2 areas of the country reported seeing a huge floating city in the clouds. Puzzled onlookers saw skyscrapers in the clouds and believed that they were seeing a ghost city or the colliding of our reality with a parallel universe. The phenomenon occurred in both Guangdong and Jiangxi, with some believing it was the beginning of an alien invasion. The images were caught on camera for the world to see and promptly went viral across the rest of the globe. So what on Earth or above Earth is going on? Well, even though it looks like a city in the clouds to you and me, apparently it is an optical illusion called Fata Morgana, which is a natural mirage. So that is what a lot of scientists are saying anyway, but other people are convinced it's a sign of a parallel universe or even a window to another world.
And we're kicking off this list with ANITA, the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna. ANITA is a high-tech balloon-type object used by NASA hovering over Antarctica. It was designed to track particles that are the result of collisions with high-energy neutrinos, which enter into our atmosphere from deep within space. Just a few years back, though, ANITA discovered something kinda strange. It detected neutrinos that a group of scientists suggested could be a glimpse into a parallel universe. The strangeness comes from the fact that these particular neutrinos seem to come from below the Earth's surface instead of from space, like all the other neutrinos the device was designed to pick up. Now, I'm not sure if you guys know this. I am not a scientist. However, the consensus amongst scientists is that this was pretty odd. This led to some hypothesizing that maybe these particles were slipping into our world from a parallel universe, where the rules of how things work might be completely opposite. Researchers have pondered that this potential parallel universe might be running time backwards. Imagine events unfolding in reverse, like rewinding a movie. So instead of coming from out there, they're coming from up there. Now, this is just speculative, but it's a possibility, and that's pretty cool. At number 9, we have a really cool story posted to Reddit by user udominate123. It seems like 2 parallel universes may have crossed over here. That's one possible explanation anyway, unless this is all just an amazing coincidence or, you know, just isn't true. Anyways, it goes like this. My company was located inside a large business park, and there were walking paths that wound through buildings, crossed roads, and spanned the entire park. Every day during my lunch break, I would take a walk on those paths to get a little exercise. One day, I was walking. I noticed a car driving towards me that was the exact same color and model as mine, which isn't too odd in itself, except my car had a very unique vanity plate on the front that this car also happened to have. As the car got closer, I noticed it had a VIP pass from an event I recently went to hanging from the rear view mirror, the same as my car. I watched very closely as it drove by, and I saw myself driving, clear as day, wearing the exact same shirt I was wearing at the time, the same glasses. Since the car was inside the business park, it was moving no more than 15 miles per hour, so I got a very good look. The person driving looked forward the whole time, so they didn't appear to see me. It drove around a corner and was gone. I tried looking in the lots of the buildings where it was driving towards, but I didn't find any of them. My car was in the exact same spot I left it, unmoved. Next on the list we have the man from Torrid. Now this story has reached urban legend status at this point, but it's still a fascinating tale. The year is 1954 and Tokyo's Haneda airport is buzzing with activity. In walks this dude, but when the customs folks asked where he's from, he drops a bombshell. Torrid is his answer. Now, wait a minute. You're probably thinking, like, well, where the heck is Torrid? What is that? Well, according to this mystery man, he pointed it out on a map, Torrid is exactly where Andorra is. Customs officers scratched their heads as the man became increasingly frustrated, never having heard of Andorra before. Torrid? Nowhere to be found though. So authorities stick him in a hotel room, guards stationed outside, but come morning, the guy has completely vanished. And not only that, but his passport and personal documents that were in custody were also nowhere to be found all of a sudden. So the idea here is that this guy slipped into our world from a parallel universe just for a short time, a glitch in the matrix, if you will, and hopefully he woke up the next morning in his own universe and got to head back home to Torrid and tell his version of events. Maybe there's another version of me shooting a video exactly like this right now, talking about the strange Japanese airport that didn't know where Torrid was, pointing at a mysterious place called Andorra on the map instead. Number 7, deja vu. Not gonna spend a lot of time on this one because you all know what it is and it's been talked about to death. But it is one of those phenomena that scientists have yet to definitively explain. There are only hypotheses, and that's pretty interesting, especially seeing as this is an incredibly common occurrence. You'd think, like, with how often this happens to everybody, that they'd have, like, cracked the code by now. Never gets old either. Like, every time deja vu hits me, it's just as magical as it was the first time, and I always have to announce it. Like, no matter where I am or how inappropriate it may be, I gotta be like, hey, I just had deja vu. Sorry, go on. Continue lowering the casket. I don't know, I just can't help it. It's so darn cool. Let me know some of your weirdest deja vu stories down below. I'm fascinated. Number 6, the wow signal. The wow signal is a mysterious radio signal picked up in 1977 by an Ohio State University radio telescope, lasting just 72 seconds. It's called the wow signal due to the astronomer Jerry R. Iman's scribbled exclamation on the data printout. The signal's frequency and intensity were unlike any known natural source, sparking speculation about its origin. Now, the most exciting theory is that it could have been extraterrestrial in origin, but some have even suggested it might have come from a parallel universe. The strange signal has only ever been captured one time, so perhaps whatever created this signal dipped into a black hole somewhere and is in a completely different universe now. But more dull explanations like passing comet or space debris have also not been ruled out, so it is definitely no definitive proof or anything, but pretty interesting all the same. It's worth checking out the recording too. Pretty spooky sounding. Number 5, the Mandela effect. This is another one that's just like with deja vu, gets talked about a lot, so I won't bore you with it for too long, but it's fun to talk about. The Mandela effect is when a lot of people remember something one way, turns out to be different. People think they remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison, but he actually didn't. Some think it's because of parallel parallel universes where different versions of reality exist at the same time. And the idea is that our memories might be crossing over from these other universes, causing this kind of confusion, a jumbled mess. There's a bunch of parallel worlds, each slightly different. Sometimes things just get jumbled up and we remember stuff from a different world. Now, that's just one possible explanation for this phenomena. Some say it's just how our brains work. Our memories are not the most reliable, and for whatever reason, there are certain things our brains collectively seem to picture one way and it just doesn't turn out to be the case. Really depends on which Mandela effect you're talking about, I guess. There are tons of different ones. Regardless though, it's another bizarre occurrence without a definitive scientific explanation. I still say my favorite one is the Pikachu's tail having like black on the end. That's one I seriously, everyone tells me, oh, when I was a kid I had a Pikachu doll with like a black, his tail was black on the end. I could swear. You can never find pictures of it unless it's like a, I don't know, unless someone just made one. I don't know. Anyway. Next up we have ghosts. Now this one is pretty kooky, but ghosts don't come up much when the subject of parallel universes are brought up, so I just thought to change things up, I'd throw them in here. Now, ghost stories are not really taken seriously by the scientific community, which is fair enough. There's really no evidence that proves these types of stories to be legitimate, but at the same time, there's not really any definitive way to disprove ghosts outright either. It's kind of an unfalsifiable thing, and again, that doesn't mean they do exist, but it is possible. Unlikely, but possible. So, do ghosts exist in an alternate dimension adjacent to our own, which crosses over from time to time? Are they stuck in some sort of dimension where time doesn't move forward like it does here, and they're just trapped in a never-ending loop, appearing the same way they did before they died? Is that what happens when we die? That's a pretty terrifying idea. And number 3, we have unexplained disappearances. Unexplained disappearances happen all the time. We talk about a lot of them on this channel. People who go out one day, never to be seen again, just gone without a trace. Now, obviously, the most likely explanation here is foul play. Someone grabbed them and is just very good at concealing evidence. But is that the explanation for every one of these cases? Maybe not. It's just people have been known to disappear without a trace either. It's everyday objects too. So, are there small pockets of space that lead to parallel universes that these people or things just happen to fall into occasionally? I told a story about a month back about a pillow I had that just vanished from the couch and then reappeared months later. Like, stuff like this happens. It's incredibly weird. Check out my top 10 evil entities people encountered in apartment blocks video for that full story, by the way. Next up, we have a story posted to Reddit by user Julia Keck, and she describes an experience that, if true, could possibly point to a parallel universe brushing up against our own for a brief moment. She writes, "When I wake up, the first thing I do is get on my computer, and so I did that one morning. I decided I'd check my subscription feed on YouTube, and the first video that showed up was just some mundane story time type of video. Unfortunately, I don't really remember what it was or the author anymore. I don't usually watch this type of stuff, but for some odd reason, I had an urge to click on it and see what it was, and so I did. I watched a few seconds of the video unamused and then suddenly got a huge feeling of deja vu. I felt like I'd watched the video before, but the weirdest thing is I started reciting it. I knew every word said in the video. Why the F would I know it? I don't remember things so clearly when I have deja vu. I freaked out because watching this video before was impossible, as it was uploaded 20 minutes before I watched it. I even checked if this was some sort of re-upload or remake, but it wasn't. And that's gonna bring us to our final point here. We have the phone call. This one was also posted to Reddit by user Torby Lilies. The story goes as follows. I was at work when my dad called my phone. I was worried that something was wrong because a few minutes earlier I had called him and he couldn't make out what I was saying, but he knew it was my voice and I sounded agitated. All he could make out were a couple of times where I used some of the nonsense nicknames I use for my parents' pets, so he thought something had happened to the dogs. I told him I hadn't called him, but he didn't believe me and thought I was pulling a prank. Later on, when I saw him in person, I showed him that the last outgoing call I had made to him had been about 5 days before, but he had definitely been called by my phone earlier that day because his phone showed an incoming call from my number, and the call had gone on for about 3 minutes before it cut off. So, I mean, this would freak the hell out of me, right? It's the fact that whoever this mystery caller is sounded exactly like them, according to their phone father and that they knew the names of their dogs. Was this a parallel version of this Reddit user who found themselves in another universe and tried calling their father in a panic, not knowing what was going on? Or had someone managed to hack their phone and knew exactly how to impersonate their voice and knew the names of their pets? I don't know. You decide.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have a little bit different. One morning in 2008, Lorena woke up in a life that was similar to the one she was living when she went to sleep, but was certainly not the same. At first it was just things like her bed sheets and pajamas, but when she got to work, things began to escalate. Lorena realized that her office wasn't her office and that she worked in the same building, but in a completely different department. She had never even met her boss before, so she knew this couldn't have been a moment where she just got lost or confused. When she returned home after the workday, she was met by her ex-boyfriend, only to find that he was apparently her current boyfriend. She tried to find the person that she had been dating for months, but he didn't even seem to exist in this new life and world that she now found herself in. Lorena began to seek psychiatric help because she was fearing she was having some sort of nervous breakdown, but all tests revealed that she seemed to be of sound body and mind. The strange occurrences continued when Lorena asked her family how her sister was doing. Lorena knew that her sister had recently had shoulder surgery and wanted to check in, but when she asked her family, they were baffled by her claims and insisted that there was no surgery that had taken place on anyone in the family. Lorena couldn't find any answers to her situation and was having no luck with a medical explanation either. She was convinced that she went to sleep one night and woke up in a parallel universe that was altered slightly by small decisions that she had made. Honestly, I can't really think of anything else that would cause all of these strange occurrences to happen all at once. In our number 9 spot today, we have the dream. This story starts off with the person explaining that a couple times a month when they dream, they head off to another parallel universe. They say that while in this universe, they are either in their hometown or are in Dallas, Texas. I'm not sure why, but it's their journey, not mine. They then go on to say that while they know these cities and know where everything is, something about them is just off. Like they're really run-down versions of what they're like here in this universe. The houses and businesses are run down, paint is peeling off the walls, it just generally looks like an abandoned city, even though it's occupied. So, this one particular dream is what got them really confused about this alternate reality. Basically, in this dream, they were living in this one house. They didn't live there in their awake reality and they had never been there before, but in this particular dream, this is where they lived. They noticed that their house was the only one on the block that had a rear garage. In the end, since they were in this rundown version of the city, they ended up coming into conflict with some bad people who were there and they found themselves in this alternate reality getting shot. They then woke up with a really bad headache, they took some Advil and decided to look up the house that they had lived in this dream. When they did, they found that not only was it a real place, but that in this awake reality, it was also the only house on the block that had a rear garage. What do you guys think? Is this just a weird coincidence or are their dreams taking them to an actual different reality? In our number 8 spot today, we have the doppelganger. This story comes from someone who swears that they saw themselves, like as if they were another person walking past. They wrote, quote, "I'm from a very dry, hot state in the US and was visiting California on a trip with my wife. While eating out, we both witnessed a person that looked exactly like me. Same typical mid-fade and head dents inherited from my father, same body type. I saw the side profile from the back as they walked away from view and it was my exact face. My wife had a direct view but could not remember directly what my face looked like, but noted that she was noticing similarities from the body to the head, even the way I walked. Couldn't believe what we saw. Any thoughts? I mean, my thoughts are that maybe this was your other self from a parallel universe, or maybe it was just your twin from right here on Earth. I mean, they say that everyone has one, right? I just can't get past how it doesn't stop at them just looking alike though, like how they act and walk as well. In our number 7 spot today, we have the boss swap. Okay, this story comes from Reddit and it starts off with the OP giving us a little context and telling us that they work at a small processing plant in Texas, that they're 22 years old and that they have been working there for about 4 months now. At the plant, they usually help the truck drivers with paperwork and inspections, and since most of the offices in the building have windows, from their office they can see the production line and they can see clearly into their boss's office and their supervisor's office, which are close together. So basically one day at work they hear the bell rang and they go to help the person at the door. They then write, quote, "As I got up, I could clearly see my supervisor working on some bill of landings. I get to the door that leads to the shipping area, the driver lets me know why he is here, and I go back inside, head to my office to get the bills for him, and head outside so he can sign them. As of now, everything is normal, but things are about to take a huge turn. As I walk through the shipping door, I have a clear view of my supervisor. It's very normal for me to hand him the signed bills, and I'm walking towards his office. I can clearly see him working on the BOLs. As I get closer to the door of his office, there's a spot outside of his office where you can't see at all into the inside, and then as I open the door, he wasn't there anymore. Instead, I come to find a lady in her 50s, black hair, and about 5'9". I screamed WTF, and she looks at me in confusion and asks me what's wrong. I explain the situation to her. She seems perplexed by the story, but lets me know that she has been in this office all of the time, that Juan was never my supervisor, and she has been the supervisor for years. Now, I remember clearly when I first started working, Juan was presented as my supervisor. His name was on the door of his office, and him and I were getting along very well. I've asked everyone here at my company and they have all said the same thing. Rosie has been supervisor for years. I guess I switched universes because now even Juan's name isn't on his door and he barely speaks to me. I truly have no idea what could have happened here, but all I know is that basically having it happen in front of your eyes would have been so confusing. In our number 6 spot today we have The Sound. This story comes from Reddit and it starts off with the OP stating that when they were 8 years old they were in a car accident and they believed that they died. They then go on to write, quote, "There was this sound, a note playing non-stop. It's similar to the sound of the machine when you flatline, but it was more instrumental. I've never forgotten, and when I asked my family they said we were in an accident, just not in the place I remember. Is it possible to die and cross over to an alternate parallel world? That sound though, it felt like it was telling me to let go, but I could not." This story definitely had me intrigued, but what got me hooked even further was the top comment on the post, which read, quote, "Quantum immortality is what people are calling it. Others have experienced this too. You just end up in a slightly different world." Quantum immortality is something that I certainly had never heard of before, but it truly is quite an interesting and fascinating concept. What do you guys think? Is something else, something bigger at play here? In our number 5 spot today we have Double Moms. This story comes from Reddit and it actually had my mind boggled when I read it, so I had to include it today too. They wrote, quote, "Back in 2012 I was staying with my mom for the last couple months of my pregnancy. She always left for work at about 7 a.m. and would wake me up while she was getting ready. This particular morning was the same thing. I'd see her out and lock the deadbolt behind her. I went into her room to watch my normal show as usual. I was watching TV at least 30 minutes before I had to use the restroom again. While I'm doing just that, my mom opened the door on me, stared at me for 3 to 4 seconds, and then closed the door. Within the time it took me to get up and wash my hands, she was gone. The deadbolt was still locked and her car wasn't in the driveway. I called to see where she was and she told me she was just pulling into work. Now today if I ask her about it, she doesn't recall ever telling me about it. What happened that day? Honestly, I have no answer as to what could have possibly happened that day, but it all sounds very weird and unsettling, to say the least. In our number 4 spot today we have The Past Life. This is a story about a feeling someone has had for most of their life, and that is the feeling that they had previously lived another life in which they were a father, despite them only being a kid at the time of beginning to have this feeling. They say, quote, "I remember being around 40 years old with a wife and 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and then one day I just woke up as a child and my past was all just a big blur with random memories that would come to me here or there. It made no sense. My parents said that I used to tell stories about when I was a dad and they would just laugh it off and be like, oh, that's just your imagination. But deep down I genuinely did have these strange memories of a past life." They then go on to talk about how a trip to Disney World with their family left them even more confused, as they had memories of their other family and them at Disney World despite them being only 4 years old at the time. They could remember where things were, where certain rides were, and they were able to show their family how to get around. In the end they wrote, quote, "After a while I stopped telling these stories of when I was a dad because my siblings would always make fun of me for it. Eventually I just started going on with my life and haven't thought much about it since then. Although I wish I did, because the memories back then were so much more vivid and real than they are now." Does anybody have any similar stories? Does this ring any bells for anyone? I know this might sound stupid, but I genuinely am just interested if anyone else has experienced something like this. I don't know. I don't think it sounds stupid, I just wonder what it could all possibly mean. In our number 3 spot today we have the inventors. Okay, this story is about a disappearance that is said to have happened under some extremely suspicious circumstances. Basically, an inventor named William Cantello was working on a new invention that was said to be a rapid-firing machine gun. One day he was ready to head out and sell the idea, so he told his sons he was going to market to sell it, and he set off, but sadly this was the last time anyone saw him. Investigations by authorities and private investigators turned up little to nothing. Some suggested that perhaps he had gone to America, but there was no record or anything that could possibly prove this theory. The case went cold, but the plot began to thicken about 20 years later when an American man named Hiram Maxim invented a rapid-firing machine gun that he called the Maxim gun. The invention, however, wasn't the only similar thing to William. In fact, Hiram bore an uncanny resemblance to William, so much so that William's sons actually mistook him for their father. If all of this wasn't bizarre enough, in an autobiography of Hiram's, he spoke about how there was a man who was impersonating him and how he had been dealing with the effects of being mistaken for William for quite a while. Were these two the same people but in different realities? What other possible answers could there be for this very strange mystery? In our number 2 spot today we have the little sister. Okay, this is a story that might be a parallel universe example, or maybe it's some sort of time slip, or maybe it's some other totally unexplainable thing. They wrote, quote, "This is all true, it still makes me confused. I was 5 or 6 years old, it was Christmas Eve. The whole family was gathered at my grandmother's house. The children slept in an upstairs bedroom while waiting for midnight to eat and unwrap the presents. All of the lights were on in the house except the bedroom lights. The parents had left the bedroom door open so that we could hear them and get some light. I remember my 2 cousins asleep. We were in the same bed. I couldn't sleep. At one point I saw a woman standing in the doorway. She was tall and thin, fair complexion, platinum blonde hair, bobbed, a bright red lipstick. She leaned into the door opening to take a look. I'd never seen this woman, but I thought maybe she was a friend of the family. The same night I told my mother about it, and she told me that she had never seen this woman. I always found this moment weird, but I told myself that I had only dreamed it. Except that 4 to 5 years later, my little sister was born. Today she is 20 years old and looks exactly the same as the woman I saw. My grandmother still lives in the same place. I have never seen this woman visiting my family again. I wonder if there wasn't a glitch that caused 2 temporalities to overlap. The explanation for the dream is the most logical, and the look of my little sister, which matches that of the woman I saw, could be a fluke. I just have a weird feeling about it. In our number 1 spot today we have memories. This story starts off with the storyteller explaining that when they were 7 years old they had a brain injury that they needed to have surgery for, but they remember for some reason being able to spectate the entire surgery as if it wasn't happening to them. At the time, since they were a child, they just assumed this was normal. That, quote, "the gas gives you a spectate option." As their life progresses on, they begin to realize that they have memories from really early on in their life, like being able to recall details of family trips that they were on when they were just 2 years old and hadn't really seen pictures of. This is all interesting to say the least, but this is where things take a turn. They then go on to explain that in their late teens, early 20s, they start having more memories, but these ones aren't their own. They write, quote, "I was hanging out with my family when my aunt mentioned something about a server being so grateful for the tip they had left when they'd gone out for dinner the night before. I responded by saying something like, 'Oh yeah, I was living off of tips when I was a waitress.' Everyone stared at me for a second and started laughing, thinking I was joking. I have real memories of being a struggling, starving waitress at a crappy pub. I then realized that I've only ever worked in offices after university and my family is well off. I would never have been struggling. Recently I was video chatting with my sister when I asked her if she remembered our friend D and told her how much I miss him because he's fully dead. He is not. She started sending me screenshots of his social media pages. He's a dad now. I also remember 2 of our other friends being brother and sister. We'd spent our teen years visiting each other's houses. Their mother picked me and her up from ballet a few times, with both of them in the car, both calling her mom, both in all family pictures. Nope, they're not related and barely know each other. I'm starting to feel insane. I have random memories that are definitely not mine, and it doesn't make sense. I honestly don't know what to think of this story, but it really is captivating. I can't imagine what experiencing all of that would be like, and I wonder what exactly is going on here. In our number 9 spot today we have the bird. This story comes from someone who saw something weird, and it wasn't out of the corner of their eye or anything like that. They saw it right in front of them as they were directly looking at it, and as of now there doesn't really seem to be any sort of concrete explanation as to how this could have happened. They wrote, quote, "I was standing outside work having a smoke. I was looking at the bike rack and thinking about how silly it was they just placed one there and didn't bolt it down or anything. Then a bird footprint showed up. Just one footprint, like a ghost bird put just one foot down in the middle of the otherwise undisturbed snow. It happened right in front of me. I was looking exactly where it happened when it happened. Very weird. Most likely the snow just happened to collapse in that shape, but still, it was strange. Maybe the snow just collapsed, maybe it was a ghost bird, or maybe it has more to do with another universe colliding with ours. Whatever the answer really is, this story kind of gives me the chills. Maybe the birds aren't the bourgeoisie and they can just jump timelines, and that's why they're so suspicious. In our number 8 spot today we have the ice cream stain. This is a strange story that someone posted online about a weird glitch in the Matrix type thing that happened to them, and it just might be an example of someone who jumped realities. They wrote, quote, "I spilled chocolate ice cream on my leg. I wiped it off and there was still a pale brown stain in the shape of the ice cream splotch. I told my mother, who said it was a birthmark. I will swear under oath that never before that moment did I have a birthmark there." Does anyone else have any weird stories like this? It's easy for us to chalk these things up to just having a wild childhood imagination, but that's also because it's an easy explanation. Maybe it's time we start asking ourselves the harder, more interesting questions. I feel like someone would remember having a birthmark. Right? In our number 7 spot today we have the randomness. Okay, when looking for signs or signals from other universes, sometimes we have to look in the most peculiar places, and that includes some of the strange things that happen in our reality. Bizarre, seemingly random things happen here all the time, and maybe it's because we live in a weird world, or maybe it's a sign that since the idea of parallel universes means that there's a universe where basically every random thing you can think of is a reality, we just live in a universe where some of those random things are bound to happen. Like, who would have guessed that Napoleon would almost be taken out by a bunch of bunnies? Or like how people can survive the seemingly impossible, like a fall out of an airplane at over 30,000 feet without a parachute. You know, just things you hear that you can't believe. I'm sure many of you watching this have seen a video on this channel at some point that had someone say something that made you go, really? And that's what I'm talking about. Maybe this isn't the best evidence of parallel universes, but hey, everything counts. In our number 6 spot today we have the conversation. This is a story that comes from someone who seems to have a sort of unusual talent, we'll call it. Maybe they're just super smart, maybe they can see the future, or maybe something else is going on here. They start by explaining that they have dreams about people or places they've never seen before, and then without fail a few months later they'll be with the people or in the place that they had dreamt about. They also have this ability to sing a random song while another one is playing on the radio, and then somehow, like magic, the next song that plays is the one they were just singing. They then go on to say, quote, "One super weird thing though happened in about 2012ish. I was 19 and living at home with my parents and younger sister still. I came home from work from my job at a barbecue place and my sister says to me, 'Oh, I thought you were off today.' I'm confused because I left at 5 AM before anyone was awake, and I ask her, 'When did I say that?' She says to me, 'Like 2 hours ago in your room.' She thinks I'm screwing with her, so I tell her to smell me because you can smell the barbecue sauce and smoke on me. Then she gets really creeped out and tells me she had went into my room earlier and saw me in bed with covers up to my neck and had a 15-minute conversation with me. That really creeped me out and I never felt comfortable in that room ever again." This actually would be really weird to experience for everyone involved. Maybe this was just a weird glitch in the Matrix, or maybe something else was at play here. Whatever it is, it seems like this person has a lot of weird things happening around them. In our number 4 spot today we have the hand. This is a story from someone who just might have seen a hand reach from another universe into ours. Maybe it's all just a glitch in the system, but it's an eerie story nonetheless. They wrote, quote, "I was putting makeup on and from the corner of my eye I saw what looked like the shadow of a hand slap down onto my nightstand. Would have dismissed it as my brain playing tricks on me or something, but I heard it too, and it sounded like a really loud smack. It was weird, but I've experienced so many small, unusual incidents like this, things randomly falling or shaking, so I guess I've become apathetic to it. That was the first time I ever actually heard the thing too, though. Not only would that be pretty terrifying, but also so confusing. You wouldn't trust your mind no matter what it was telling you. You know what you saw and heard, but could it possibly be true? Maybe there's a reasonable explanation, maybe it's whoever's in charge of the simulation, and maybe it has something to do with another universe. At this point, anything is possible. In our number 3 spot today, we have space signals. There are tons and tons of signals that we detect from space every single year. Some we understand and can figure out where they're coming from and what is causing them, and some others aren't quite so clear and have stumped researchers for years. Some believe that these mysterious, unexplained signals are coming from extraterrestrials. Perhaps the signals we are receiving is from some sort of space situation that we just don't know about yet because it doesn't occur close to us here on Earth. The possibilities really are endless when we're talking about the ever-expanding universe and the unexplained things that exist within it, and that is why, just perhaps, these signals could mean something else. Maybe in another universe we are well aware of the other universes that exist parallel to that one, and we are trying to communicate with the one that we live in. Maybe the signals are being sent through black holes. Okay, maybe I'm getting a little far-fetched, but really, anything could happen. In our number 2 spot today, we have the time jump. This is a story about a location that has some weird sort of time jump. At first, everyone thought the person experiencing it was playing some kind of a prank, until others experienced it for themselves as well. They wrote, quote, "Had a friend who was convinced something was wrong with the area between the nearby town and his home." Or maybe it was his car. He claimed that many times he'd leave work and somehow be home 5 minutes later when it was a 15 to 20 minute drive. It was crazy. He wasn't the only one who experienced it either. Happened to a few friends that rode with him. Definitely weird stuff. I mean, listen, I hate commuting, so I wouldn't be upset by this sort of a glitch, but I would definitely be confused. I'm glad other people got to experience the weirdness of the situation too. I wonder if it had something to do with just his car and the area, because you'd think other people who drove the same roads would notice the same thing too, right? Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have PSR B0943+10. Pulsars are rotating neutron stars emitting regular pulses of radiation, and they have long captivated astronomers with their very precise cosmic metronomes. But in 2011, a particularly eccentric pulsar, the one I just named, challenged established understanding and left scientists scratching their heads. Located approximately 3,000 light years away, this is no ordinary pulsar. Instead of maintaining a steady, predictable pattern of radiation, it displays a very perplexing behavior. Without warning, it spontaneously switches between emitting radio waves and X-ray emissions. This erratic mood swing bewilders scientists. Standard models of pulsar behavior were based on the idea that radio wave and X-ray emissions were tied to different periods in a pulsar's life, not that a pulsar could switch between them at will. PSR B0943+10's unpredictable switches happening over mere seconds shatters this belief. Despite being discovered in the 60s, it wasn't until 2011 that this pulsar's unusual trait was detected, demonstrating that even familiar celestial bodies can surprise us. This pulsar's peculiar behavior provides a very unique window into neutron star physics, challenging our knowledge and understanding of these celestial lighthouses. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Galactic Center radio signal. In 2013, astronomers turned their attention closer to home, or more accurately our galactic home, the Milky Way. Detected by the New Star Space Telescope, an unexplained signal emanated from the center of our galaxy, a region dominated by the gravitational behemoth, the supermassive black hole Sagittarius A. This unusual signal, detected in the radio wave spectrum, posed several intriguing questions. Was it perhaps a signal from a previously undiscovered celestial body, or some unforeseen interaction of known cosmic objects? objects? Or could it be an indication of dark matter, the elusive substance that makes up about 85% of the universe's mass? While the nature and source of this galactic center radio signal remain undetermined, it underscores the cosmic riddles that surround us, even in our own galactic backyard. Whether we're probing the distant reaches of our universe or exploring our own galaxy's heart, these celestial signals remind us that our universe continues to be a grand puzzle, offering more questions than answers. In our number 8 spot today, we have the orphan afterglow. In the cosmic theater, the year 2019 marked a peculiar detection that challenged the norm. Astronomers using the Chandra X-ray Observatory observed a unique phenomenon, an X-ray burst that was strikingly alone, without its usual precursor, a gamma-ray burst. The cosmic enigma was dubbed an orphan afterglow. Typically, gamma-ray bursts, the most energetic explosions in the universe, precede X-ray bursts. These gamma-ray events often indicate the birth of a black hole or a neutron star, and the subsequent X-ray afterglow is the lingering echo of this cataclysmic event. However, the orphan afterglow seemed to defy this established pattern. The solitary X-ray burst appeared without a detectable gamma-ray burst, sparking curiosity and speculation among the scientific community. What could have caused such an event? Was it merely that the gamma-ray burst was directed away from Earth, or were there alternative processes at play? In our number 7 spot today, we have the Vela pulsar glitch. In the cosmos, even the most predictable celestial bodies can sometimes throw astronomers a bit of a curveball. This was the case in 2000 with the Vela pulsar, a pulsar that, despite being one of the most observed and best studied, presented an unexpected event that left astronomers scratching their heads. The event, fittingly termed a glitch, saw the pulsar suddenly rotating faster than it usually did. Located about 1,000 light years away in the Vela constellation, the Vela pulsar is a type of neutron star that emits regular beams of electromagnetic radiation out into space. Since its discovery in 1968, it has become one of the most watched celestial objects due to its regularity, allowing scientists to predict its rotations with impressive accuracy. However, in 2000, this predictable rhythm was abruptly disrupted. The Vela pulsar experienced an unexpected acceleration in its rotation. While this pulsar is known to quote-unquote glitch every 3 years or so, the 2000 event was noteworthy due to its scale. The sudden spin-up was larger and more dramatic than anything observed previously, leading to much speculation and study. This intriguing event challenged existing theories about pulsar glitches and their internal structure. Despite decades of observation, the Vela pulsar reminded us that the universe still has countless mysteries to be unraveled. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Green Bank Telescope FRB. In 2012, the vast expanse of our cosmos spoke once again, this time with a signal captured by the Green Bank Telescope, located in West Virginia in the United States. The signal wasn't a gentle whisper, but a bold, intense burst of radio waves, a fast radio burst, or an FRB. FRBs are brief yet powerful blasts of radio waves that come from distant parts of the cosmos, lasting only a few milliseconds. The source of the Green Bank Telescope FRB, much like other FRBs, remains an enigma. These fast radio bursts, due to their brevity and unpredictable nature, have been notoriously difficult to trace back to their origin, and this one was no exception. Since their first detection in 2007, FRBs have posed a significant challenge to astronomers. What cosmic phenomena could generate such powerful yet fleeting signals? Theories range from highly magnetized neutron stars to extragalactic civilization. The Green Bank Telescope FRB added another layer to this cosmic mystery, an enigma still being explored and deciphered by scientists across the globe. In our number 5 spot today, we have Tabby's star. This star, which has also been referenced as the WTF star, is an F-type main sequence star which is located in the constellation Cygnus, about 1,470 light years away from Earth. This star is of particular importance because of the fact that it shows unusual light shifts, which includes a 22% dimming in brightness. Basically, from our point of view, something continually blocks the star, and it likely isn't a planet, because a Jupiter-sized planet would only block about 1% of a star the size of this one. So what could it possibly be? There are a few theories out there surrounding this anomaly, but none are able to fully explain what is happening here. Some believe that it is some sort of uneven ring of dust orbiting the star, and others believe that the star's luminosity fluctuates depending on the efficiency of the heat being transported to its photosphere. These are just two of the theories surrounding this star, but there are many more out there, and at this point, we just don't know. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Black Widow pulsar. Unveiling the drama of the cosmos, our universe revealed an intense astronomical spectacle in 1988. Astronomers detected a fascinating object, a pulsar known as the Black Widow pulsar, or PSR B1957+20. Pulsars are neutron stars, remnants of supernova explosions characterized by emitting regular beams of radiation as they spin. However, the Black Widow pulsar stands out from its kin due to a unique and somewhat macabre characteristic. Located approximately 6,500 light-years away from Earth in the constellation of Sagittarius, this pulsar is locked in a destructive cosmic dance with its companion star. As they revolve around each other, the pulsar's intense gravitational pull and radiation are steadily vaporizing its unfortunate partner. The process resembles a venomous black widow spider consuming its mate, hence the name. The pulsar's companion, initially comparable in mass to our sun, is now merely a tenth of that, stripped away by the relentless energy of the Black Widow. The radiation emitted from this process is intense and rhythmic, like a cosmic lighthouse casting regular signals into the depths of space. Despite the seemingly predatory nature of the Black Widow pulsar, it provides astronomers with an exceptional opportunity to study the effects of extreme gravity and radiation on stellar bodies. This astronomical phenomenon encapsulates the sheer power, violence, and strange beauty of the universe, reminding us of the dynamic and often brutal processes at play in the cosmos. In our number 3 spot today, we have Hoag's object. Okay, so there are different shapes to galaxies. That's not the weirdest thing in the world. You know that we live in a spiral-shaped one. It's beautiful. There are other galaxies called ellipticals that are more like oval shapes, but one galaxy in particular, which is now called Hoag's object, is truly like none we've ever seen. Just realizing, how do we get a name like the Milky Way and then they get a name like Hoag's object? Just would be a horrible name for a galaxy. This galaxy has a yellow core, and this core is surrounded by an outer ring of blue stars that are much younger than the core, but in the middle between the two, there's just nothing, and researchers are completely stumped as to how it could have formed. The galaxy was first discovered in the 1950s, and since then, there is one leading theory as to how it could have been formed, but it still isn't concrete. Basically, the leading theory suggests that perhaps a small galaxy sped through a larger disc-shaped galaxy, which then created this bizarre situation. But the problem with this theory is that there are no signs of any nearby galaxies that could have served as the sort of bullet in this scenario. If that happened, it also would have sped up the core of Hoag's object, but we can observe it as moving quite slowly, so that also rules out this theory. There have been other galaxies discovered that have some similar characteristics to this one, but none share all the qualities seen in this very bizarre galaxy. In our number 2 spot today, we have the mysterious gap. A new analysis by scientists at MIT of ancient meteorites found something new and very interesting. In the early solar system, there was what is referred to as a protoplanetary disk of dust and gas that rotated around the sun, and eventually it coalesced into the planets that we all know and love today. So this new study and analysis suggests that a sort of mysterious gap existed within this disk somewhere around 4.567 billion years ago, and it was in an area near where the asteroid belt is today. The reason this gap is mysterious is because it isn't quite clear what the cause of this gap was. There are a few possibilities, including Jupiter, during the time when it began to take its shape. Because of its extremely large gravitational pull, it could have pushed gas and dust towards the outskirts, which then would leave a gap in the developing disk. There are other possibilities, but regardless of whatever caused this gap, it is said to have likely served as a cosmic boundary that kept material on either side from interacting with each other. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have shooting stars. Okay, so we often look to the night sky in an attempt to see a shooting star, and the chances might be pretty good depending on how light polluted the area is. I mean, either that or you're seeing one of the Starlink satellites, but either way, we know that shooting stars aren't really stars at all, and are instead meteors burning up as they quickly move through Earth's atmosphere. But what if I told you that there really are some shooting stars that are actually stars? Hypervelocity stars were discovered by astronomers stars in 2005, and it is thought that they occur or form when a binary star system, or a star system that has two stars, gets destroyed by a black hole. One of the stars in the system will usually fall into the black hole, which may just send the other one flying across space as fast as millions of miles per hour. It's definitely not the same thing that we think of when we think of shooting stars, but it definitely is quite the galactic event. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have Jupiter's green dot. NASA recently dropped this gem of a photo captured by their heroic Juno mission during its 31st close flyby of Jupiter back in December 2020. Now, let me set the stage for you. The photo showcases Jupiter's colossal swirling patterns. Yes, it's a gas giant, mind you, but right in the center, an otherworldly circle of vivid green light is glowing away, stealing the show. That radiant ring is as out of place as finding a disco ball at the Royal Ball. Against the backdrop of Jupiter's dark blues and browns, it stands out like a sore thumb. Clearly, it's not your ordinary part of the planet's natural attire. It looks like someone playing with glow sticks in space, or maybe a space party gone wild, but there aren't any extraterrestrial party animals to blame for this interplanetary glow show. So who's behind the curtain? As it turns out, this mysterious green spot on the planet just might be a bolt of lightning striking near Jupiter's north pole. We know that here on Earth, lightning dances in the skies thanks to our water clouds, illuminating our world with its white-hot flashes. But on Jupiter, things get a tad more frightening. Lightning prefers to show off its skills in clouds infused with an ammonia water solution, and it tends to throw its electrifying parties mostly around the planet's polar regions. This green spot just might be coming for the title that the infamous red spot holds. In our number 9 spot today we have space roar. You would think that space is silent, right? I mean, it's a vacuum, so it should be, but that is not the case. It is said that the entire universe is alive with sound, and there is a thing called space roar. Space roar apparently isn't an everyday sound, and is rather these strange radio signals that scientists have detected throughout space. These signals are so loud that they are able to drown out other signals, which can be quite annoying for the scientists who are trying to study and learn. While we know what the sound is, we don't know where it is coming from. Apparently some people believe it was coming from the leftover radiation from early stars, and some others believe it is from the gases swirling around the galaxy in clusters, but at the end of the day, no one is really sure, and it remains one very noisy mystery. In our number 8 spot today we have the lone survivor. This is an unexplained signal that was first detected in 2003 when astronomers were using a massive telescope in order to re-examine 200 different areas of the sky. I say re-examine because these were areas where there was once a signal that was detected coming from them, and they were taking a look back to see if they could detect the same signal again. During this re-examination, they found all of the signals had disappeared except for one. The signal didn't only stick around either, but it got stronger. This signal is coming from between the constellations of Pisces and Arius, and the curious thing about this location is that it resides in a place where there are no known obvious planets or stars. To make things even more mysterious, there are scientists who believe that the frequency this signal is in is the frequency alien life would be most likely to use if they were trying to contact us. I have no idea what leads them to that theory, but it felt too interesting to exclude. So while there are other possibilities of what these signals are or where they are coming from, it is quite an interesting piece of information and is something that definitely deserves more looking into. In our number 7 spot today we have Saturn's rings. Saturn is well known for its impressive and stunning rings. I mean, they are the most extensive out of all of the planets in our solar system, and while seeing photos and diagrams is lovely, meeting the rings in person might not be so much of a pleasant experience. These rings consist of a ton of particles that range in size from micrometers to meters, and they are mostly made up of water ice, but they have some trace components of rocky material as well. In December of 2016, the Cassini spacecraft, which spent years studying Saturn and its icy moons, flew through one of these impressive rings, and the spacecraft's radio and plasma wave science instrument was able to pick up the sound of what crossing one of these rings sounds like. At first, it's just the regular staticky sound of being close to the planet. But then as the crossing happens, things get a little louder and a little more rocky. The influx in sound is due to the particles bombarding the craft as it flies through the air. It is incredibly cool to hear this and get a bit of a closer look into what it's like to be near the planet, but it is also just another perfect example of how terrifying and absolutely relentless space can be. In our number 6 spot today we have the Little Green Men. Let's journey back to the year of 1967, where astrophysics met the unexpected in a very dazzling discovery. Jocelyn Bell Burnell found herself analyzing data from a radio telescope, and within the sea of information she stumbled upon a symphony of regular, rapid pulses. These enigmatic pulses, now known as pulsars, danced through the cosmos with such precision and consistency that they sparked wild speculation. They were playfully dubbed LGM, or Little Green Men, igniting dreams of extraterrestrial contact. The scientific community, usually composed, was momentarily shaken. Could these pulsars be cosmic Morse code from distant civilizations? The tantalizing possibility of interstellar communication sent a shiver of excitement and trepidation through their dedicated ranks. Alas, as the dust settled, it became clear that the pulsars were not intergalactic messages, but rather the cosmic choreography of rapidly rotating neutron stars. These dense remnants of stellar explosions emitted focused beams of radiation, creating a rhythmic celestial light show that captivated our human minds. In our number 5 spot today we have the Black Knight satellite. This story begins in the intriguing era of the 1950s, where tales of a peculiar satellite lurking in Earth's orbit began to captivate the collective imagination. Dubbed the Black Knight satellite, this alleged extraterrestrial artifact has remained an enigma feature in the annals of cosmic lore. It is said to have been associated with perplexing radio signals that curious amateur radio operators claim to have intercepted. These signals, like whispers from the great beyond, hinted at a presence beyond our terrestrial realm. As with any enigma, skeptics emerged, attributing these signals to mere earthly influence or technical glitches. However, the allure of the Black Knight satellite endured, its mystery captivating those who dare to question the boundaries of our cosmic knowledge. Conspiracy theories have blossomed, weaving intricate narratives around this enigmatic satellite. Some speculate that it is a remnant of an advanced alien civilization, an extraterrestrial sentinel silently observing our planet. Others ponder its purpose, wondering whether it holds hidden knowledge or cosmic secrets that could forever alter our understanding of the universe. In our number 4 spot today we have the solar system exit. What we are about to listen to isn't a real-time space recording, but it is an audiograph of the Voyager's plasma wave science observations that spanned several months between 2012 and 2013. The readings are important because this is the first time when scientists believe that the Voyager left our solar system's heliopause, making it the first human-made object to leave our solar system. It's a huge step for science and space exploration, but the sounds that accompany it are anything but comforting. I mean, come on. That horror movie style shrieking sound on the way out into deep space isn't exactly what we want to hear. I'm not entirely sure what the source of that sound is, but let's all just hope that it isn't something sinister. In our number 3 spot today we have the Venus signal. For many years we have been trying to figure out just how Earth and Venus turned out to be so different. Venus is Earth's closest neighbor and they are quite similar in size and density, but that's about it. Venus has a thick, toxic atmosphere that is filled with carbon dioxide. There are thick yellow clouds of sulfuric acid that trap heat on the planet, which has caused temperatures that are hot enough to melt lead on the planet. It's the hottest planet in our solar system, and it's not even the closest one to the sun. This is all exactly why, during a brief swing by Venus, when NASA's Parker Solar Probe detected a radio signal that was signifying that the spacecraft had flown through the planet's upper atmosphere, it was exceptionally interesting. This was the first direct measurement of the atmosphere of Venus in about 30 years, and it showed that it was significantly different from before. A new study published showed that Venus's upper atmosphere undergoes some very interesting and very confusing changes over a solar cycle, which is the sun's 11-year activity cycle. This could potentially give us clues as to how and why the Earth and Venus are so different. Because of the harsh climate on the planet, spacecrafts have only been able to survive at most for a couple hours there, so there's still so much mystery mystery surrounding what exactly goes on Venus. In our number 2 spot today, we have the BLC-1. As astronomers were searching for the existence of life beyond our planet, they spotted something that piqued their interest. This was a radio signal that has yet to be explained that was coming from the direction of the star that is closest to the Sun, Proxima Centauri. The reason why this specific radio signal was so exciting and promising is because this star has at least 2 planets that orbit it, and one is thought to be temperate and rocky, like Earth. The observations in which they picked up these signals took place between April and May of 2019, and they were detected by Breakthrough Listen, which is a decade-long search for alien broadcasts. They were using Australia's Parkes Observatory when they made their discovery, and they explained that throughout their search, every now and then finding something strange is expected, but this detection was more unusual because it was a strange discovery that required them to then begin planning next steps, which does not happen very often. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have light shifts. In 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in the light that was coming from a star that was newly discovered. This star sits about 1,280 light years away from us on Earth, and these shifts were very similar to as if something was passing in front of our view of the star briefly before passing through. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or anything like that, which we could understand, and this is what led Jason to quite an interesting theory. He stated that it is possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a kind of orbit, like an array of massive satellites, or a similar kind of structure, like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent or civilized life form.
Number 10. Pisces and Aries radio signal. A radio signal was received 3 times from the same region of space in February 2003. Astronomers with the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence (SETI) project used a massive telescope in Puerto Rico to re-examine 200 sections of the sky which had all previously yielded unexplained radio signals. These signals had all disappeared except for one, which had become stronger. The signal's widely thought to be the best candidate yet for alien contact and comes from a spot between the constellations Pisces and Aries where there are no obvious stars or planets. Curiously, the signal is at one of the frequencies that hydrogen, the most common element, absorbs and emits energy. Some astronomers believe that this is a very likely frequency at which aliens wishing to be noticed would transmit. Nevertheless, there's still a good chance the signal is from a never-seen-before natural phenomenon, but I'd like to think that it's aliens. Number 9. Mysterious beam of energy. In December 2020, researchers announced that they had captured a very mysterious beam of energy in the radio part of the electromagnetic spectrum at 980 MHz coming from the closest star to our own. Proxima Centauri, which is just 4.2 light years away, hosts one gas giant and one rocky world 17% larger than Earth that happens to be in its star's habitable zone, meaning liquid water could exist there. The unexplained signal reportedly shifted slightly while it was being observed in a way that resembled the shift caused by the movement of a planet. Researchers are excited but cautious, explaining that they will need to figure out if more mundane sources, such as a comet, hydrogen cloud, or even human technology, could be mimicking an alien signal, and that it will likely take time before they know one way or another if aliens are contacting us. Number 8. Milky Way signal. On April 28, 2020, 2 ground-based radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves within the Milky Way. It was the first time an FRB had ever been detected within our galaxy, and despite only lasting a millisecond, it was almost impossible to miss. Located just 300,000 light years away from Earth, the FRB was picked up by the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, CHIME, and the Survey for Transient Astronomical Radio Emission 2, STARE-2. CHIME wasn't even looking in the right direction, and we still saw it loud and clear in our peripheral vision, said Kyoshu Masu, assistant professor of physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. STARE-2 also saw it, and it's only a set of a few radio antennae literally made out of cake pans. April 2020's discovery was also notable for being the most energetic radio blast that astronomers have recorded in the Milky Way. But what made it most exciting is that scientists are now closer to determining
origin of FRBs. They've been billions of light years away, making them a lot harder to study, but now there's one close by. Number 7. Mysterious signals from a distant galaxy. The Chime Observatory found 13 FRBs, and among it was a very unusual repeating signal coming from the same source about 1.5 billion light years away. Such an event has only been reported once before by a different telescope. Knowing that there is another suggests that there could be more life out there, said Ingrid Stairs, an astrophysicist from the University of British Columbia. And with more repeaters and more sources available to study, we may be able to understand these cosmic puzzles, where they're from, and what causes them. The telescope detected 13 of the radio bursts almost immediately, including the repeater. The research has now been published in the journal Nature. We have discovered a second repeater, and its properties are very similar to the first repeater. This tells us more about the properties of the repeater as a population, said Sir Harsh Tendulkar of McGill University, Canada. Number 6. Star closest to the sun radio signal. An as yet unexplained radio signal appears to be coming from the direction of the star closest to the sun, a small red star roughly 4.2 light years away called Proxima Centauri. Adding to the excitement, at least 2 planets orbit this star, one of which might be a temperate and rocky like Earth. Breakthrough Listen, a decade-long search for alien broadcasts from the nearest million stars, was using Australia's Parkes Observatory to study Proxima Centauri when the team detected the signal, which they dubbed BLC-1. The radio waves were picked up in observations made between April and May 2019. While processing those observations in the summer, Shane Smith, an undergraduate from Hillside College in Michigan working with Breakthrough, spotted BLC-1 apparently radiating from the star. Although the signal is faint, BLC-1 passed all the tests the Breakthrough team uses to filter out millions of signals generated by humans. It was narrow in bandwidth, appeared to drift in frequency, and disappeared when the telescope shifted its gaze from Proxima to a different object. Over the following days, 4 similar signals appeared, although some have been ruled out as radio interference. It's pretty expected that every now and then you'll see something weird, but this is interesting because it's something that's weird and that we have to think about the next steps, says Sophia Sky, a graduate student at Pennsylvania State University and the Breakthrough team member leading the signal analysis. Number 5. Farthest radio signal from a galaxy. Astronomers using a radio telescope in India have captured the most distant ever radio signal from a galaxy. This signal came from a galaxy called SDSS J0826 plus 5630 that exists 8.8 billion light years away. That essentially means that it exists closer to the Big Bang than any other galaxy previously detected using radio astronomy. A galaxy emits different kinds of radio signals, said Arnab Chakraborty, a postdoctoral researcher who studies cosmology at the Department of Physics at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. Until now, it's only been possible to capture this particular signal from a galaxy nearby, limiting our knowledge to those galaxies closer to Earth. The researchers from both Montreal and India used the giant meter wave radio telescope in Pune, India, to capture the signal at a specific wavelength called the 21 centimeter line. The signal from the galaxy was emitted when the universe was only 4.9 billion years old, but because the universe is expanding, it took 8.8 billion years to reach the telescope. Wow. This breakthrough proves that it's possible to observe faraway galaxies using low-frequency radio telescopes. This will help us understand the composition of galaxies at a much greater distance from Earth, said Arnab. Number 4. Radio signal heartbeat. Astronomers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have picked up repetitive radio signals from a galaxy billions of light years from Earth. Scientists have not been able to pinpoint the exact location of the radio waves yet, but the signals have been occurring steadily and last up to 3 seconds. Most fast radio bursts, or the FRBs, only last a few milliseconds. Within this window, the team detected bursts of radio waves that repeated every 0.2 seconds in a clear periodic pattern, similar to a beating heart.
report, MIT said in a statement. On December 21st, 2019, researcher at the Dominion Radio Astrophysical Observatory in British Columbia, Canada, picked up signal of a potential FRB according to the MIT statement. Not only was it very long, lasting about 3 seconds, but there were periodic peaks that were remarkably precise, emitting every fraction of a second, boom boom boom, like a heartbeat, said Danielle Michelli, a postdoctoral researcher in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Calvi Institute for Astrophysics and Space Research. This is the first time the signal itself is periodic. Data on the bursts, including their frequency and how they change based on where the source is located in proximity to Earth, could help researchers determine at what speed the universe is expanding. Number 3. Bright, quick blasts of radio waves. Repeating bursts of energy seem to be coming from an ancient group of stars called a globular cluster, which is among the last places astronomers expected to find them. Often originating billions of light years away, the extremely bright, extremely brief bursts of radio waves, known as the fast radio bursts, have defied explanation since they were first spotted in 2007. Based on observations to date, scientists surmise that the bursts are powered by young, short-lived cosmic objects. But a fast radio burst discovered has now been traced to a globular cluster about 11.7 million light years away near the neighboring spiral galaxy M81. To put it in perspective, finding this burst among a cluster of aging stars is kind of like finding a smartphone embedded in the Stonehenge. The observation doesn't make sense. Brian Gainsler, an astronomer from the University of Toronto, said this is definitely not a place where fast radio bursts are expected to live. Scientists are struggling to explain the cosmic aneurism. They're also moving toward the conclusion that maybe, as with many other celestial phenomena, there are multiple ways to cook up a fast radio burst. Number 2. Bursts of energy. While mapping radio waves across the universe, astronomers found a celestial object releasing giant bursts of energy, unlike anything they have ever seen before. The spinning space object, spotted in March 2018, beamed out radiation 3 times per hour. In those moments, it became the brightest source of radio waves viewable from Earth, acting like a celestial lighthouse. A study on the discovery was published in the journal Nature. Lead study author Natasha Hurley-Walker, an astrophysicist at the Curtin University node of the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research, said this object was appearing and disappearing over a few hours during her observations. That was completely unexpected. It was kinda spooky for an astronomer because there's nothing known in the sky that does that, and it's really quite close to us, about 4,000 light years away. It's in our galactic backyard. Curtin University doctoral student Tyrone O'Doherty made the unusual discovery while using the Murchison-Wilford Array, aka the MWA telescope in the outback of Western Australia. Tyrone said, "It's exciting that the source I identified last year has turned out to be such a particular object. The MWA's wide field of view and extreme sensitivity are perfect for surveying the entire sky and detecting the unexpected." And coming in at number 1, the WOW signal. In 1997, astronomer Jerry Amen was researching at The Ohio State University when an incredible and unexplainable radio signal was detected using the school's Big Ear telescope. In those days, information was run through what was called an IBM 1130 mainframe computer before being printed on paper and then studied by hand. Upon reviewing his findings, Jerry came across something he had never seen before. There, in a vertical column, was the sequence 6EQUJ5. Jerry was amazed and immediately circled the sequence and wrote "wow" right beside it, hence the name. The signal they picked up had come from nearly 220 million light years away, and there was no explanation as to how or why a radio signal could be detected from that distance. It immediately became a sensation in both the science community and the rest of the world, and was used to support the search for alien life in the universe. Jerry himself says he's convinced that it certainly has the potential to be the first signal from extraterrestrial intelligence.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have space roar. You would think that space is silent, right? I mean, it's a vacuum, so it should be, but that is not the case. It is said that the entire universe is alive with sound, and there is a thing called space roar. Space roar apparently isn't an everyday sound and is rather these strange radio signals that scientists have detected throughout space. These signals are so loud that they are able to drown out other signals, which can be quite annoying for the scientists who are trying to study and learn. While we know what the sound is, we don't know where it is coming from. Apparently some people believe it was coming from the leftover radiation from early stars, and some Some others believe it is from the gases swirling around the galaxy in clusters, but at the end of the day, no one is really sure and it remains one noisy mystery. In our number 9 spot today we have light shifts. In 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in light that were coming from a star that was newly discovered. This star sits about 1,280 light years away from us on Earth, and these shifts were very similar to as if something was passing in front of our view of the star briefly before then passing through. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or anything like that, which we could understand, and this is what led Jason to quite an interesting theory. He stated that it is possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a kind of orbit, like an array of massive satellites or a similar kind of structure. Like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent and civilized life form. You see where I'm going. In our number 8 spot today we have the lone survivor. This is an unexplained signal that was first detected in 2003 when astronomers were using a massive telescope in order to re-examine 200 different areas of the sky. I say re-examine because these were areas where there was once a signal that was detected coming from them, and they were taking a look back to see if they could detect the same signal again. During this re-examination they found that all of the signals had disappeared, well, all except for one. This signal didn't only stick around, but it got stronger. This signal is coming from between the constellations of Pisces and Aries, and the curious thing about this location is that it resides in a place where there are no known obvious planets or stars. To make things a little more mysterious, there are scientists who believe that the frequency this signal is in is the frequency alien life would be most likely to use if they were trying to contact us. I have no idea what leads them to that theory, but it felt too interesting to exclude. So while there are other possibilities of what these signals are or where they're coming from, it is quite an interesting piece of information and is something that definitely deserves a little more looking into. In our number 7 spot today we have the Milky Way radio burst. On April 28, 2020, 2 radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves, and they only lasted just a millisecond, but they left some astronomers astonished. The reason for this is because it was the first time a fast radio burst had been detected that close to Earth. The signal was located 30,000 light years away from Earth, which places it in our Milky Way galaxy. It also apparently was extremely difficult to miss these radio waves as well. The Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or CHIME for short, and the Survey for Transient Astronomical Radio Emission 2, or STARE-2 for short, explained that it was in fact so easy to pick up that CHIME wasn't even looking in its direction, and it was still so easy to detect because it was loud and clear right in their peripheral vision, and STARE-2 also saw it clearly, even though, according to Kiyoshi Masui, assistant professor of physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, it's only a set of a few radio antennae literally made out of cake pans. Well, it looks like whatever the cause for this signal, something or someone perhaps really wanted us to see it. Or maybe it's just a strange coincidence and is just part of the mysteries of space and our galaxy. In our number 6 spot today we have Saturn's rings. Saturn is well known for its impressive and stunning rings. I mean, they are the most extensive out of all of the planets in our solar system, and while seeing photos and diagrams is lovely, meeting the rings in person might not be so much of a pleasant experience. The rings consist of a ton of particles that range in size from micrometers to meters, and they are mostly made up of water ice, but they have some trace components of rocky material as well. In December of 2016, the Cassini spacecraft, which spent years studying Saturn and its icy moons, flew through one of these impressive rings, and the spacecraft's radio and plasma wave science instrument was able to pick up the sound of what crossing one of these rings sounds like. At first, it's just the regular staticky sound of being close to the planet. But then, as the crossing happens, things get a little louder and a little more rocky. The influx in sound is due to the particles bombarding the craft as it flies through the air. It is incredibly cool to hear this and get a bit of a closer look into what it's like to be near the planet, but it's also just another perfect example of how terrifying and relentless space can really be. In our number 5 spot today we have the BLC-1. As astronomers were searching for the existence of life beyond our planet, they spotted something that piqued their interest. This was a radio signal that has yet to be explained that was coming from the direction of the star that is closest to the Sun, Proxima Centauri. The reason why this specific radio signal was so exciting and promising is because the star has at least 2 planets that orbit it, and one is thought to be temperate and rocky like Earth. The observations in which they picked up these signals took place between April and May of 2019, and they were detected by Breakthrough Listen, which is a decade-long search for alien broadcasts. They were using Australia's Parkes Observatory when they made the discovery. They explained that throughout their research, every now and then, finding something strange is expected, but this detection was more unusual because it was a strange discovery that required them to then begin planning next steps, which does not happen very often. In our number 4 spot today we have the Lorimer burst. This is a fast radio burst that was detected in 2007, and it was named after the person who spotted it, Duncan Lorimer. Well, actually, it was discovered when Duncan assigned his student David Narkevic to look through archival data taken in 2001 by the Parkes radio dish in Australia. After analyzing this data, it was found that there was a quote 30 Jansky dispersed burst that occurred on July 24, 2001. This burst was less than 5 milliseconds long, and it was located just 3 degrees from the small Magellanic Cloud. It still isn't quite clear what caused this signal, but it's thought that perhaps it might have been a singular event, such as a supernova. In our number 3 spot today we have the solar system exit. What we're about to listen to isn't a real-time space recording, but it is an audiograph of the Voyager's plasma wave science observations that spanned several months between 2012 and 2013. The readings are important because this is the time when scientists believe that the Voyager left our solar system's heliopause, making it the first human-made object to leave our solar system. It's a huge step for science and space exploration, but the sounds that accompany it are anything but comforting. I mean, come on. That horror movie style shrieking sound on the way out into deep space isn't exactly what we want to hear. I'm not exactly sure what the source of the sound is, but let's just all hope that it isn't something sinister. In our number 2 spot today we have the WOW signal. In August of 1977 there was a radio telescope at Ohio State University that detected a strange signal. The radio picked up a pulse of radiation that was super unusual and was coming from somewhere by the constellation of Sagittarius. The signal lasted for 37 seconds, and it has been commonly referred to as the WOW signal because of the fact that astronomers observing it were so shocked at the time that they wrote WOW on the printout from the telescope. This signal was so shocking because it was in a band of radio frequencies that are internationally banned on Earth. There are a multitude of natural sources for radiation in space that would cover a multitude of frequencies, so there are scientists who are skeptical that this could be proof of alien life, but skepticism doesn't mean it should be ruled out. Maybe this signal came from a huge astronomical event, or perhaps intelligent alien life with a very powerful transmitter who are trying to contact us. At the end of the day, the signal was detected in 1977 and we still don't know exactly where it's coming from or why it exists, so who's to say for sure. In our number 1 spot today we have the Venus signal. For many years we have been trying to figure out just how Earth and Venus turned out to be so different. Venus is Earth's closest neighbor and they're quite similar in size and density, but that's about it, to be truthful. Venus has a thick, toxic atmosphere that is filled with carbon dioxide. There are thick yellow clouds of sulfuric acid that trap heat on the planet, which has caused temperatures that are hot enough to melt lead. It's the hottest planet in our solar system, and it's not even the closest one to the sun. That is all exactly why, during a brief swing by Venus, when NASA's Parker Solar Probe detected a radio signal that was signifying the spacecraft had flown through the planet's upper atmosphere, it was exceptionally interesting. This was the first direct measurement of the atmosphere of Venus in about 30 years, and it showed that it was significantly different from before. A new study published showed that Venus's upper atmosphere undergoes some interesting and confusing changes over a solar cycle, which is the sun's 11-year activity cycle. This could potentially give us clues as to how and why the Earth and Venus are so different. Because of the harsh climate on the planet, spacecrafts have only been able to survive at most for a couple hours there, so there is still so much mystery surrounding surrounding what exactly goes on Venus.
Starting off this countdown, we have the alien signal. Back in 2016, we received a signal from a nearby star, and some people believe that it was sent by aliens. So the star is in the constellation Hercules. It's about 95 light years away, which seems far, because it is, but it's relatively close according to the universe's scale. Anyways, this star is said to have at least one planet, and it's roughly the size of Neptune, and it's thought to have the right conditions to support life. So could this planet have life on it? Who knows? But let's talk about this signal. It was so strong that they believed it came from a Kardashev Type 2 civilization. A Type 1 civilization can use and store energy from a nearby star like us, whereas Type 2 can harness the energy from the entire star, meaning it makes that planet more advanced. So it may just be that the signal was sent from extremely advanced life forms. Moving on to number 9, we have the wow signal. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then smash that like button because it really helps us out. Also, don't know what that was, but hit the like button for me, thanks. On the night of August 15th, 1977, an Ohio State University radio telescope received a quite fascinating signal. The signal lasted 72 seconds and it was intense, more intense than anything in the sky that night. Now the signal did not repeat, and over the years people have tried to find it again, but all attempts have failed. It was like a one-off. The signal is said to have come from deep space, in an area that is relatively free of noise from other objects. Now it was given the name the wow signal because when reviewing the data, Jerry Amen was so shocked by it that he wrote wow next to it. Still to this day we have no clue what caused the signal, but it was pretty significant. Wow, Owen Wilson, wow. Moving on to number 8, we have the Soyuz 11. On June 6, 1971, 3 Soviet cosmonauts launched into space. Their goal was to make a record for the longest time spent in space. Sadly, the mission failed and they became the first people to die in space. While in space, their breathing ventilation valve ruptured. All 3 sadly died from decompression. The last message they sent to Earth was them trying to scream for help, but they couldn't, so all they heard was them gasping for air and then weird popping sounds, which is from the air in their lungs expanding from the drop in air pressure and being exposed to the vacuum of space. The worst part? The spacecraft survived re-entry into Earth and landed perfectly, but when the hatch was open, they found the dead crew inside, their faces filled with dark blue splotches and blood dripping from their ears and noses. Moving on to number 7, we have the 13 signals. Back in 2019, the Chime Observatory in British Columbia, Canada picked up a very strange signal. They observed 13 of the same signals. These are what they call FRBs, or fast radio bursts. You're probably like, psh, okay, what's the big deal? Well, all of the 13 bursts came from the same location and they were 1.5 billion light years from Earth. And detecting that is super uncommon. It's only been seen once before. So 13 at the same location and time, that's suspicious. A number of people think that it was someone or something signaling for help. Could it be life on another planet? Aliens? Who knows? In our 6th spot today, we have the pattern. This next signal is pretty terrifying, and that's because it appears like clockwork. So basically, the signal will chime for 4 days, then after the 4th day, it stops making that weird noise. It stops for 12 days before picking up again and doing the same thing over and over again. It's thought that maybe on the days where it's not sending a signal towards us, it's actually sending a signal in another direction. Some believe that this is coming from aliens or other life forms, whereas others think that it's a star sending out radio waves and then orbiting by something that could be blocking the signal for 12 days and then returning to a position where we can hear it. It's just incredibly mysterious and we don't know what to make of it. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the mysterious flashes, another very strange and mysterious signal that we have yet to figure out. So astronomers have detected a signal that will beam to Earth for 90 days before being silent for 67 days. They noticed that this pattern would repeat every 157 days. Its cycle is that precise. The signal is being sent from a distant galaxy and this pattern has been happening since 2016. Furthermore, the signal is quite strong. It unleashes as much energy as our sun does in a century in just a few milliseconds. Like, what the actual hell is going on? Theory goes that aliens have created a powerful machine that has the capability of sending out this strong signal, but then it needs 157 days to recharge itself before continuing on. But who knows? In our fourth spot today we have the eerie sounds. This is quite possibly one of the creepiest things I have ever heard. So NASA decided to gather all of the creepy sounds that they have ever heard and put it all together on SoundCloud for us to enjoy. It literally sounds like aliens communicating with each other or something like that. NASA refers to these sounds as moans and whistles from the universe. Isn't that just great? Moving on to number 3, we have the pulse of radio waves. Just recently on April 28, 2020, 2 telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves. Now the signal only lasted for a millisecond, but astronomers were blown away by this and said it's a major discovery. Why? Well, this is the first time a fast radio burst has ever been detected so close to Earth. The signal came from the Milky Way. In fact, Chime wasn't even looking for it, but it was so loud and clear that they caught it anyways. They said that this burst is helping them discover what these things are and where they're coming from. Maybe we'll find out if there's aliens out there sooner than we thought. Moving on to number 2, we have the lost cosmonaut. A lot of people refer to this next story as an urban legend, but with the facts I'm about to provide you with, it might just change your mind. So legend goes that back in the 1950s to 60s, 2 brothers were working as amateur radio operators. One day they were listening in on space when they heard what sounded like a cosmonaut returning to Earth's orbit. They managed to record her final moments. Her spacecraft was malfunctioning, and in the recording the woman speaking in Russian is pleading for help, saying it's getting hot, because the craft was burning up. Turns out that her spacecraft caught on fire and she was frantically sending messages hoping someone would hear it and somehow help her. But the Soviet Union just sent her up there and left her to die. Now the Soviets denied this, saying that it was an unmanned craft that burned. But the thing is, a lot of cosmonauts died during the space race, and they refused to reveal a number of those deaths. Half the time they would just cover them up. So this recording could be real. And in our number 1 spot today we have the final words. In 1967, Soviet test pilot, aerospace engineer, and cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov was sent into space on the Soyuz 1. However, the mission did not go according to plan and the spacecraft was extremely faulty. But Vladimir didn't really have a say in going on this mission. He kind of felt forced to do so. He said that if he didn't go, then the backup pilot would have had to go, which was his best friend, and he said he didn't want to do that to his friend, so he went and sacrificed his life instead. He knew the mission was going to fail, and he was right. Once he began to orbit Earth, a number of issues began to happen, such as the antennas not opening up properly. The worst came to him on his re-entry into Earth. On April 24th, 1967, during his re-entry, the parachutes failed to open. The signals he sent to Earth were haunting. On his way down, translators heard him say heat was rising in the capsule. He then began to curse the people who put him inside of this botched spaceship, saying they killed him. His final moments were him cursing and crying in rage. Imagine hearing that and listening to a man's final words. It's very haunting. Starting off this countdown, we have the gamma ray burst. In 2012, researchers found evidence that back in the Middle Ages, a massive blast of gamma radiation hit Earth. What they still don't know is what could have caused this. To give you an example of how big this blast was, if it happened nowadays, it would have destroyed every single satellite there is out there. Not only that, if it had happened closer to Earth, it would have literally destroyed the entire ozone layer and then life on Earth as we know it. So yeah, it was crazy strong. It exerted an incredible amount of energy. Now, what could have caused this? Well, there are a couple of theories. One was that it was a result of 2 black holes colliding. 2. It was a result from 2 neutron stars merging, or 3. Some sort of massive explosion took place within the Milky Way. Either way, let's hope that it never happens again, and it doesn't happen close to Earth, or else we're doomed. Coming in at number 9, we have the solar winds. This is a terrifying sound that was captured by NASA satellites, and then they literally uploaded it to SoundCloud as part of their spooky Halloween playlist, and it's indeed spooky. Just listen to it. Obviously, it's mixed with other solar sounds, but it's still creepy. This is said to be the sound of solar winds passing by the satellites. They combined it all together and made this horrifying soundtrack. I'd rather they not. But I will say though, put headphones on and close your eyes and listen to it. The raindrop sounds are quite soothing to the ears, as weird and as creepy as they sound. Moving on to number 8, we have the Cassini spacecraft. The Cassini spacecraft was the 4th space probe to visit Saturn and the first to enter its orbit. And when it did, it picked up some weird signals. The signals were then converted into an audio file and shared online for us all to hear. Dude, I don't know what's going on with Saturn, but even scientists agree that the sounds they recorded from Saturn are horrifying. Coming in at number 7, we have the sun. The next signal was recorded from none other than our light and heat source, the sun. The Stanford Experimental Physics Lab took data from the European Space Agency and NASA and turned it into this sound. This is the sound of the sun. Waves are constantly traveling and bouncing around inside the sun, and this is the sound of it. Now, this isn't so bad compared to the other sounds from space that we heard today, but there's a crazy theory that this is some sort of message. Like if we were to sonify a bunch of other sounds from the solar system and manipulate the sounds, maybe we'll be able to decipher this message from like the sun gods, or I don't even know. Moving on to number 6, we have the FRBS. So we're going to be looking at FRBS, or fast radio bursts. Scientists are constantly tracking these strange blasts, trying to figure out where they're coming from and what's causing it. Well, in April of 2020, one astronomer found an FRB coming from within our own galaxy for the first time. They examined it and found that it was coming from a magnetar called SGR 1935-2154. It's a mouthful. This, in fact, was the first evidence that magnetars can produce radio waves powerful enough to be detected. The proximity of the burst made it appear really bright. In fact, one of the researchers said, and I quote, "It is much brighter than any other radio object in space, by a large margin." In fact, this burst had energy about 3 times more than the energy that is emitted from the sun every second. It's kind of intense and crazy how powerful that signal was. And we still haven't fully figured out what it means. So, aliens. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the roar of Jupiter. In June of 2016, NASA's Juno spacecraft crossed the boundary of Jupiter's magnetic field. What they captured sounds horrifying. They call it the bow shock. Bow shock is when the supersonic solar wind is heated and slowed by Jupiter's magnetosphere. It can be compared to a sonic boom on Earth. Let's listen to it. They named that the roar of Jupiter. Now, that's not even the creepy sound. The next day, they captured something even worse. That is the sound of the crossing of the magnetopause, which is the boundary between the sun's magnetic field and Jupiter's magnetic field. And at number 4 today we have the blinking stars. Now let's change it up a bit. This next signal is not one that you can listen to, but it's a one that you can see. Back in 2016, a group of Canadian astronomers saw 234 stars blinking at the same time. Now this is very odd. How is it that such a large amount of stars are blinking all together at the exact same time? One of the astronomers, Eric Trotter, is convinced that the blinking stars are a signal from aliens. He thinks that they are using some type of laser to communicate with us. They are flashing these lasers all at the same time to get our attention. So does that mean that they have 234 lasers, or just, I don't even know. But either way, this is really odd, and we still don't know what caused it or what it means. Moving on to number 3, we have the quasi-crystal. This is something that crashed down onto Earth in 1979 Siberia. When it was first dug up, people were like, okay, it's just a hunk of rock. But no. Little did they know that it was something way more advanced. The quasi-crystal had 60 points of rotational symmetry that seemed to be perfectly made by technology that is unknown to humans. This isn't something that could naturally form in nature as far as we know. It looks as if this was created by some sort of alien race and then launched out into space to educate another species on the ways of advanced technology. So far, we have discovered no way to replicate this type of structure whatsoever. Also, this crystal dates back to 4.5 billion years ago, so it's really freaking strange. Is it true? Could it have been sent from another species? Coming in at number 2, we have the screams from Ganymede. Over the years, astronomers have recorded a number of freaky sounds from Jupiter's moon Ganymede. This sound I'm about to share with you is what was recorded when a spacecraft flew by Jupiter's moon. Honestly sounds like aliens talking to each other and then using some weird electronic device to send out beeping signals, like maybe it's a message. But that's not the worst part. They captured what sounds like someone screaming. That's horrifying. It sounds like someone yelling out in pain. Another time astronomers were shocked by the sounds from Ganymede were when they converted the chorus waves around the planet and moons into sound. Again, it sounds very frightening and bizarre, as if someone is trying to tell us something. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Proxima Centauri. A number of scientists are dedicated to finding and investigating alien life. In fact, they believe that a signal from a nearby star was sent by aliens. Basically, they received a narrow beam of radio waves coming from the direction of Proxima Centauri, a red dwarf star 4.2 light years away from Earth. It's the nearest star to the Sun. They claim that this signal is the first serious candidate since the WOW signal. If you don't know what the WOW signal is, I talked about it in part 1, so check it out. Anyways, let's listen to what they recorded. Scientists have yet to discover what was causing this signal. Now, that high-pitched buzzing sound continues on for a long time, then all of a sudden it changes very abruptly. Like, what the actual hell was that? I don't know, and I never want to hear it again. What makes things creepier is that at least 2 planets orbit this star. Those planets are believed to be habitable for certain life forms. So maybe something is out there living on those planets and sending us signals. Starting off this countdown, we have Jupiter's ionosphere. This eerie recording was recorded by NASA's Juno spacecraft in February of 2017. This is the sound of the plasma waves in Jupiter's ionosphere. And let me tell you, it's eerie. It starts off as just like a plain, almost static sound. Then it picks up and sounds like roars. Now that's not even that bad, I will admit. The freakiest part though is when it captured what sounded like someone moaning or groaning in pain. Listen carefully. It happened pretty fast, but you can hear like a sound. That same low grunt happened several other times throughout the recording, and they don't know what it's from. Obviously, NASA is like, oh, it's just the natural sounds of Jupiter, but everyone else is like, aliens! In our ninth spot today, we have the knocking sound. Back in 2003, astronaut Yang Liwi became China's first man in space. In 2016, Yang revealed during interviews how terrified he actually was up in space by himself. In fact, he told his creepy story of the unknown knocking sound he heard. So basically, he claims that he heard, and I quote, someone knocking the body of the spaceship just as knocking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. It neither came from outside nor inside the spaceship. He looked outside of the porthole but never saw anything tapping on the spaceship. Since his return to Earth, they still haven't figured out what caused this sound. They even tried to recreate the sound and scenario, but all attempts failed. The only theory is that it happened as a result of the expansion or contraction of the spaceship, or ghost aliens messing with us. In our 8th spot today, we have the Roswell Rock. This is an object that is believed to have been from space. I mean, we get pieces of meteorites all the time, so this space rock shouldn't be unusual, right? Wrong. This rock is unusually smooth and uniform in color. It's just way too perfect. On top of it, the rock has a design protruding from the surface of it. Now, it was given the name the Roswell Rock because it was found in Roswell, New Mexico, which has had its fair share in alien UFO sightings. So it might have been left by some ETs or something. Upon analyzing the rock, researchers have realized that the rock's design actually matches a crop circle that was found in England in 1996, which makes this whole thing that much weirder. Some are convinced that this rock is some message sent by aliens. Not only that, but the rock has some weird magnetic properties to it. It's unlike anything they have ever seen before. Linda Moulton, along with other researchers, believe that it's some message sent from aliens or someone or something in space. As for what it means, one theory is that the rock contains a date for some event that has or will happen. Moving on at number 7, we have Europa. Europa, otherwise known as Jupiter 2, is the smallest of the 4 moons orbiting Jupiter. Back in 2017, when the Galileo spacecraft flew by the moon, it picked up some weird signals. Kinda creepy and alien-like, not gonna lie. But wait until you hear the screams it picked up. Yes, you heard me correctly, it picked up something that sounds like screams. NASA claims it's just the sounds of the plasma waves interacting with Earth's magnetic fields that somehow created a strange whistling noise that sounds like an alien screaming. Or it could just be an alien screaming. Coming in at number 6, we have the Voyager plasma sounds. That's one way to hurt your eardrums. This sound was recorded by Voyager 2 as it passed by the outer magnetosphere in 1979. This is the sound created, and I quote, at a special frequency in the plasma with a magnetic field. The frequency is set by the number of electrons in a given volume and the strength of the magnetic field. That's what NASA had to say about it. Now the last couple of seconds sound almost like birds singing in the morning, but as we all know, there are no birds in space. Unless, are there alien birds? We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Dropa discs. Hands down, this object came from space and is a message sent by aliens. So in 1938, an archaeologist led an expedition near the Bayan Har Mountains in China. While there, they came across some ancient caves that had these weird discs buried in there. These discs were over 10,000 years old and resembled phonograph records. So they were like, wait a minute, what if it is a record and holds some kind of message? So then they were placed on this like special turntable, and the discs would vibrate / hum in a weird rhythm as if an electric charge was passing through them. To make things weirder, the discs had images carved into them. The drawings told a story about a spaceship that crashed into the mountains. Coincidence? I think not. So theory goes that these records contained some sort of message from aliens that we have yet to solve. Moving on to number 4, we have the Hubble. When I say that this is the scariest space recording I have ever listened to, this is the scariest space recording I have ever listened to. So that was recorded by the NASA Hubble Space Telescope. It's the sounds from the Helix Nebula, which is 655 light years away. Now space has no sounds, and clearly these audio recordings dispute that, but no, what they did is use sonification to figure out what it would sound like if it did produce sounds. And then this clip went viral on Twitter because it sounds like a scary woman screaming. At first, I thought it sounded like that damn ghost from Scooby-Doo. You know, hey!
Get out of here!
But then you hear that scream, and that's enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Moving on to number 3, we have the unexplained music. So back in 1969, during the Apollo 10 space mission, the astronauts on board the shuttle claimed to have heard eerie music as they circled the moon. It happened when the astronauts were on the far side of the moon and lost radio and visual contact with mission control. They were alone for about an hour, just traveling along listening to this spooky music, which today still hasn't been solved. The astronauts described it as unusual whistling noises or space music. In fact, the astronauts debated telling mission control about it. They feared they wouldn't believe them and that they wouldn't be taken seriously on future space missions. Although we don't have a concrete answer for what the sounds could be, theory goes that the noises were a result of radio interference, whereas others believe it was some sort of message from aliens. Or maybe it was aliens blasting their music, just having a party on one of the planets, and then we rudely interrupted them. Coming in at number 2, we have the Space Shuttle Columbia.
Just taking a few hits here. We're right up on top of the tail. Not too bad.
Max flight.
Flight max.
And there's no commonality between all these tire pressure instrumentations and the hydraulic return instrumentations.
No, sir. That's...
On February 1st, 2003, the Columbia Space Shuttle was destroyed upon re-entering Earth's atmosphere. All 7 individuals on board sadly lost their lives. The signals and messages they sent to mission control while this was happening was horrifying. NASA released the transcript as well as some of the final messages of the astronauts, and just hearing it is heartbreaking. Basically, mission control started noticing a bunch of things going wrong with the craft. The individuals on board tried to stay calm and think positively, but they just kept getting worse and worse news from mission control.
ACOM.
I've got 4 temperature sensors on the bond line data that are off scale low.
Columbia out of communications at present with mission control as it continues its course toward Florida.
Flight Inco, I didn't expect this bad of a hit on comm.
The saddest part was towards the end of the recording, they keep sending messages to the space shuttle, but all they hear is silence. That's when entry flight director Leroy Kane says, "Lock the doors."
Flight GC, lock the doors. Copy.
This means nobody leaves mission control until everyone finishes their reports and written accounts of what they just witnessed. They knew that this was the end of the crew and the mission. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Cassini spacecraft. Back in 2004, the Cassini spacecraft went into orbit around Saturn. It was on a mission to study Saturn's rings and moons, you name it. But while out there, it picked up some creepy emissions. They then altered the emissions so that they could be heard by the human ear, and what they captured is quite eerie. was pretty much constant, like it gets louder at some points, but I'm sure you all heard that weird split second of a different noise. I have no clue what on earth that was, and maybe I don't ever want to even know. Starting off this countdown, we have the new reality. There are a number of real people out there that have gone to bed and woke up in a completely different universe or reality. One where things are the same, but slightly different. Now, if you have seen our other videos, we have talked in depth about some of these stories, like the woman named Lorena Garcia. One day she woke up with a completely different job, was with the same company, just a different position, and she had a completely different boyfriend. Her former boyfriend just disappeared without a trace. And now she's stuck in this timeline versus her old one. Then you have a man that woke up and all of a sudden he was a fisherman. He spent the day living a different life, and the next day he was back to his old self. Now, no one knows what causes this to happen, but it personally terrifies me. What if I accidentally universe jump to a place where I'm unhappy or my life is just completely different? Plus, no one would believe me, you know? They would label me as crazy. Moving on to number 3, we had the change of route. A couple of years ago, the next narrator was walking to work one day when they all of a sudden had an urge to take a different path. Every day, they took the same route, but today, they decided to go down a different way. So they turned and went down an alley. Now, I mean, any normal person would be like, no, don't go down that creepy dark alley, you're gonna get mugged or killed. But something was telling this guy that he needed to go down that way. So he did. And that's when he zoned out. He said that his mind went scrambled. He also said, and I quote, "I felt like I didn't have a body anymore, just that I was a semi-conscious entity floating through some weird dimension. All of a sudden, in the array of different colors and shapes, a vision came to me. It was a bunch of strange-looking people that in my mind resembled businessmen in suits. They looked startled and panicked that I could see them. One of the people made a quick movement and everything turned black. Then when he snapped out of this, he found himself on a completely different street, back on his way to work." I don't have an explanation for this. Honestly, it seems like for a split second he was looking into another universe or something though. In our second spot, we have the close call. Several years ago, this guy worked at Little Caesars Pizza. He worked as one of those sign spinners, you know, to get people into the store. One day, while sign spinning, he saw a van heading straight at him. It drove over the curb and hit him directly. He felt it crush him against the street post. Then everything turned black. But all of a sudden, he gasped and he was awake and still alive. He's still on the corner and he's still holding his sign. No car was there, he was alive. Since he was shaken from the experience, he decided to go inside the store for his break. As he walked away, he heard a loud crash. As he turned around, he saw the same van crash into the street post where he had been standing. So maybe in another universe, he died from that car crash. In this universe, he survived. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the portal. There's a cabin in the Marcahuasi Stone Forest in Peru that apparently is a ticket to another dimension. This story was told by a woman who one day was out camping in the forest with her friends. That's when they heard music coming from another area in the forest, so they decided to follow the sound and check it out. Then they came across a small stone cabin. It was illuminated by torches. What was weird is that they could see in through the windows, and the people inside were wearing 17th century fashion. The women, being curious, decided to go check it out. In fact, one of the friends was a little too curious, and she tried entering the cabin. She stepped foot inside when her friend pulled her away. Instantly, half of her body became paralyzed. It was the half that entered the cabin. To this day, she still remains paralyzed on that side of her body. So it's believed that this cabin would have taken them to another dimension. Since half of her body entered another dimension and then was yanked out, it threw off her nervous system, resulting in her partial paralysis.